All right, drive time, Wednesday afternoon, 13 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock on another beautiful spring day outside. About 72 degrees and sunny here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. And as it is every single day, it is good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic, Porter Larson producing the show today behind the glass in our Broadway Media Studios. A lot to do, jam-packed Wednesday. We'll get you halfway through your work week and one day closer to the weekend right here up until 6 o'clock tonight. The Utah Mammoth, great win last night in overtime against Edmonton. Potentially a playoff preview, and that was as entertaining of a hockey game you're going to see. Obviously, Edmonton has the best player in the world in Connor McDavid. They took a 3-1 lead, but the Mammoth came back and got the win 6-5. Now, Mammoth at this point cannot move up, but it looks like they will not move down either. There's still a couple of, I'll just call them formalities to settle in, but we are going to see playoff hockey here in Salt Lake City, Utah, which is just a treat. I'm telling you, if you've never had a chance to experience Stanley Cup playoff hockey, do everything you possibly can to get down there. The building has been alive regardless of the stakes. I mean, this community has really embraced our pro hockey team. But there's an extra added layer of intensity as the battle for Lord Stanley's Cup will make a stop in Utah. As of now, it is Edmonton. There's an outside chance that either Vegas or Anaheim could be the matchup. Handful of games left for all of these teams, but a hell of a win for the Mammoth last night. The Utah Jazz allowed 98 paint points, 42 transition points, and they got their asses kicked by New Orleans. But John Conchar messed around and got a triple-double. How about that? A career night for Bez and Bang. Do you guys have any idea who I'm talking about? 156, 137, 2 more games left. My goodness. Can we just get this season over with? And we'll turn our attention to the NBA draft lottery. We'll turn our attention to the NBA draft. And obviously free agency and offseason ahead when the Jazz will, by all accounts, be serious about trying to win basketball games next year. Still a weird dynamic. But a lot of sneaky tanking taking place last night. We did see a pretty good game between the Celtics and the Hornets in Boston. Charlotte's a really good team. I think it's kind of a story the Jazz fans can look at as they took a little bit of an unexpected step up this year. Con Knippel is your likely rookie of the year. But again, last night featured several games with one team trying to win and the other team trying to lose. Now, the Jazz are pretty much guaranteed of not falling below 5. If they can stay at 4 in the draft lottery odds, they essentially keep their pick no matter what. And even if they're at 5, chances are the Jazz are keeping the draft pick, which they just have to do, or else all of this was much ado about nothing. We'll get to some NBA storylines on the program today. Cade Cunningham is expected to play versus Milwaukee, so good news for Detroit. A weird situation going on between the Mavs and the Lakers, and an MRI with Austin Reeves. So kind of an odd dynamic there we'll get into on the show. A few weeks away from the NFL draft, latest mock. I'll let you know where Spencer Fano, Caleb Lomu are right now. Spring football going on. Up on the hill, we have Major League Baseball beginning a couple of weeks ago, so that's going on. We got a ton to do, a lot going on. RSL is on a break again. They'll be back in action on the 18th, February the 18th, San Diego at home. So a few weeks off with RSL. We'll get to some soccer storylines as we're high speed ahead to the start of the World Cup. So a bunch to do, a lot going on. Thanks for making us a part of your day. Tim McMahon will be our first guest. Covers the Jazz when the Jazz deserve to be covered, but covers the NBA for ESPN. And weekly guest of ours for the most part. We'll bring Tim in today. Smitty live in studio. Maybe we'll talk some Masters with Smitty. It is the par 3 contest going on where the players have an opportunity to bring their wives and children on the course, their partners and their kids. It's like the coolest thing they do to see these players as husbands and fathers instead of just golfers. But we'll get to some NBA stuff with Smitty. Andy Larson will join us today. Andy is no longer on the Jazz beat, but he was at the game the other night writing some things for the Trib. So we'll see how Andy's new gig is going and talk some Jazz basketball with Andy. Then we'll talk some college football and the business of college athletics as a whole with one of our favorites today, and that is Matt Brown from Extra Points. So jam-pack Wednesday show. Tim McMahon, Richard Smith, Andy Larson, Matt Brown, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners. Porter Larson producing the show today. It's hard not to just really enjoy this par 3 situation, this thing they do at the Masters every year.
It's a lot of fun. The chance to see the players, kind of let their guard down a little bit before what is the most tense 4 days in golf. So yeah, it's always fun, and usually someone puts on some sort of display of ridiculous skill, skipping a ball across the water, or hitting a hole in one on it somewhere. So always a lot of fun. But tomorrow we get to the real deal.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Porter brought up the memory a few years ago. Jack Nicklaus. I mean, that'd be cool if Jack Nicholson was in it. Jack Nicklaus's grandkid hit a hole in one. This is a daunting tee shot, by the way. I mean,
it's not easy.
Even just to land it on the green is a difficult thing. I've seen your golf swing before on a video. I think you played in one of those tournaments, but I don't know that I've ever seen you play golf. Do you think you could hit it on the green?
That's the problem is, like, the swing's good. It's fluid. So you get some really good shots mixed in there. It's just not consistent enough to be predictable at all. So there's a 50% chance that, I stick a shot on the green, and a 50% chance that it's completely off to the left on someone's deck. If you're at the Park City Municipal Course, there's a guy on the right side that gets pissed off when you hit a ball on his deck. It could go either way.
Nothing is worse than guy who bought house on golf course angry that golf ball hits house. What did you think was going to happen, fella?
Right.
It's part of the deal.
Now, to be clear, try to avoid it.
Well, obviously, you shouldn't aim at the home.
Not an intentional hit there, but yeah, there have been those situations on the golf course.
Aaron Falk has a photo of me where I hooked a drive in Moab, and I hit a guy's home, and I went to apologize, and he came running out, and we're 5 feet away from each other. And I'm saying what you're saying. I'm like, do you think I said to him, do you think I did that on purpose? Because if I could do that on purpose, I would aim for the center of the fairway every time.
Right.
If I could hit it where I wanted to every single time. I believe he's in shorts and a tank top, like an A shirt. There's an old term for that piece of clothing that I don't think is kosher anymore. Do you understand what I'm laying down?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Aaron has the photo. It's pretty funny.
I'd like to see that.
Okay. All right.
Been there, though. Been there.
Yeah, we all have. So if you own a home on a golf course and you get upset that a golf ball hits your house, that's a you problem, pal. All right, Tim McMahon's going to be our first guest, Wednesday afternoon style. But before Tim stops by, courtesy of our good friends at IFA Country Stores, it's time now for your opening tip. Any drive to the basket begins with the first step on the court. That's the ultimate power move. IFA's Step 1 crabgrass preventer and lawn food is the first choice to give your yard the thick, healthy green look you admire. The neighbors will be green with envy. Shop IFA online at ifa.coop or stop by one of their neighborhood stores today. All right, some local action last night. The Utah Jazz had a 10-point lead, and then, they allowed the hapless New Orleans Pelicans to score 156 points, 92 points in the paint, which is just wild. The Jazz have no rim protection with Walker Kessler and Jaren Jackson Jr. and Lowry Markkanen sitting on the sideline. It's left to Kyle Filipowski, and poor guy just doesn't guard the paint. They allowed 48 transition points, which is also just a wild number, 18 of those in the third quarter. Doesn't matter, obviously, because as of now, the Jazz continue their goal of trying to just hold on to the draft asset. And as we sit here today, the Jazz are tied with the Kings. The Kings lost last night for the 5th spot overall. Now, the Jazz technically would be beneath the Kings because the Kings own the tiebreaker. So with a couple of games left, I don't know that the Jazz are going to be able to I hate the way we're talking about this league. Catch Brooklyn, Indiana, Washington. Brooklyn has won 2 straight games, so they're actually in danger of falling out of the bottom 3. If the Jazz could get into the bottom 3, that, of course, would be best case scenario. 2 more painful games left in what has just been a joke of a situation for about 4 years now. You get the Grizzlies on Friday. You get the Lakers on Sunday. And then we can turn our attention to the NBA draft lottery and hope that Lady Luck shines upon us in this market in a way that it quite frankly just never has. Because if you look at what they're going to be able to bring back next year, they're going to have some decisions to make. The one thing that continues to hang over them is the Walker Kessler situation. I am of the opinion that there is not a number that would dissuade them from matching the contract in order to bring Walker back, but we'll have to see how that plays out. The biggest piece of intrigue is ultimately where they're going to land in the lottery and what does that mean? If they get the top pick, it changes everything. If they're able to get a top 3 pick, it probably changes most everything, and maybe even a top 4. You fall out of the top 4, and it seems to be a bit of a consensus that that's where this line of delineation is taking place. Now, you'll have options like a Darius Acuff Jr. or a Kingston Flemings from Houston, some other potential intriguing options that are lead guards, and I think that's what they need the most. The Darius Acuff Jr. kid, as we've talked about, is a lot like Keontae George. But, we were talking with some analysts last week, and I don't love this example because the Spurs right now are set up remarkably for the present and the future, and it's mostly because of Victor Wembanyama, but they already had Stephon Castle on their roster, and they just went with Dylan Harper. Now, the reason I don't love that example is Keontae George is not even in the same zip code as Stephon Castle, and we don't know enough about Darius Acuff Jr. I don't think the Jazz are in a spot where they can just draft a player that's redundant. Now, if they've done their calculation and they believe that Darius Acuff Jr., let's say the Jazz fall to 5. No, excuse me. Let me start over. That would not be a fall. The lottery odds have been flattened, as I continue to talk about. So that's where they're most likely to draft as of today. So if the Jazz end up where they're most likely to end up, that is at 5. If they've done their calculation and Darius Acuff Jr. is the best player available there, the Jazz aren't good enough to go positional need, in my opinion. Just grab the guy who you think is the best player, no matter what position he plays. If you intermix what I perceive to be their biggest need, and that is a lead guard, because I don't think Keontae is that, and Isaiah Collier, to me, has played his way into the conversation about being your backup. You just don't want him starting for you and playing 30, 35 minutes a night. You can live with 15 minutes of Isaiah Collier a night, and then if there's foul trouble or if there's an injury, you know that you got a guy that has proven to you that he can play pretty well in your space. But Kingston Flemings at 5, to me, would fit exactly what the Jazz need. And that is a lead guard who has good size, has improved, and has played for a coach that knows how to get guys ready for pros in Kelvin Sampson. Because most people believe, again, this tier 1 at the top is whatever order you believe, it should go. Darren Peterson, A.J. DeBonsa, Cameron Boozer, and then Caleb Wilson. And when we had Gordy in, when Sean was traveling, that was his assertion as well. And he's very high on Caleb Wilson. And Caleb Wilson is a player that unfortunately suffered an injury. But if the Jazz are there at 4, do they believe Caleb Wilson is simply the best player? Do they believe as a result of his quote-unquote pro position, which would be a 4/5, that they're too stacked there and then they look in another direction? Not sure, but all of this effort looks like it will lead to what the Jazz wanted it to, and that is hold on to their draft pick. So the NBA draft for Jazz fans should be a lot of fun to follow. All right, we'll catch a break. Still a handful of NBA games left and some Jazz storylines to talk to Tim McMahon about. He'll join us coming up next. Then it's Richard Smith, Andy Larson, and Matt Brown. Busy Wednesday show, and it's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. 2 more games left, Jazz fans. 2 more games left. That's all. You can make it. Memphis Friday at home, the Lakers on the road on Sunday. And then it's time to turn our attention to next season. Or, Tim McMahon, should we already have turned our attention to next season?
No, I think you got to lock in on that Memphis game. It's going to be, a hard-played affair. Actually, in all seriousness, if you enjoy like unintentional comedy, tune into that Memphis game.
Yeah.
I am curious to see the measures taken in that game.
Well, John Conchar messed around and got a triple-double last night, Tim. They allowed the Pelicans to score 156 points. Care to talk about Conchar's triple-double, Kennedy Chandler's career high, or Bez and Bang's evolution?
No.
Okay.
I don't.
All right, fair enough. Moving on. We were discussing to start the show because now they're bottom 4, and there's a chance they'll end up at 5, depending on what happens over the past couple of games. But they're going to hold on to the asset. Even if they're at 5, it's like 0.6% chance. Mm-hmm. And I know that, and I like you, just kind of let the draft experts kind of analyze the prospects they talk about every day. Here's the question, though. If they get into this space where they have the option of utilizing the pick on something they feel like they need positionally, or simply just taking the dude who's the best player, because Darius Acuff Jr. is a name that continues to kind of pop up, and he's just a lot like Keontae, but they're just not in a spot where I think they can emphasize need. Do they just take the best player regardless of the position this player plays?
Yes, I think that's what you have to do when you're in a position like the Jazz. Obviously, look, the Jazz are hoping to turn the page and be a competitive team next year. Certainly they'll go into next season with at least postseason aspirations. If they can make a leap to the play-in, that would be a successful season. But they are still searching for the bona fide face of the franchise. This is the guy that we're building around type of talent. Could Ace Bailey evolve into that? Sure, that's possible. Jaren Jackson's, a cut or two below that. He's an outstanding player. He's been an all-star. He's not, he's not the kind of guy who's you say, hey, this dude's going to be the number one guy on a good team. So when you're searching for that, you can't be picky about position. You just have to take the best talent.
I wanted to share something with you. And look, this could absolutely just be messaging, and it could be, saying what they need to say to back up their guys, or maybe they believe it. And I'll tell you off air who said it. I just promised I wouldn't say it on air. But I went down to the game last week, and I had one of their front office people say to me, we wouldn't trade Ace for the number 1 pick this year. Is that how they really feel? I don't know, but that's saying something. Before we move on to more interesting NBA topics, I feel like they really love the way Ace has kind of fit into the system.
Yeah, I'm not sure I completely buy that, but I definitely like the general gist of that message is that they are ecstatic with Ace is 100% true. And again, when I talk to Will Hardy about Ace, he brings up the defensive end of the floor first. A guy with that kind of size and length and athleticism who wants to be a good defender, who's wants to play hard on that end, wants to learn on that end. And then, offensively, it's not hard to imagine what he could develop into. There's still a lot of developing that needs to happen. But again, size, length, athleticism, the ability to create his own shot. He's a guy, he has 25, 30 point per game potential. I don't know if he will get there, but they're excited about him as a potential elite scoring two-way player.
All right, moving over to other NBA storylines outside of the Jazz, 2 games left. Help me understand what's going on with this Dallas Maverick, J.J. Redick, Austin Reeves MRI situation. What exactly happened here?
So the gist of the story is obviously Austin Reeves is injured in Oklahoma City. Their next stop is Dallas. It's common practice that you as a visiting team, the home team will perform your MRIs for you, and they MRI'd the wrong body part of Austin Reeves, and then it becomes whose fault is it? J.J. Redick blamed the Mavericks. publicly, kind of flippantly, after practice the next day when they were waiting on the result of the second MRI on the accurate body part. And the Mavericks are basically saying, hey, we did the MRI that you guys requested. So it's kind of pointing the fingers, and it's something that didn't need to be revealed publicly. J.J. Redick chose to do so. And then, obviously the Mavericks weren't thrilled with that. There's a lot of mess around the Lakers right now. It's crazy how high they were flying in March. A 15-win month. Luka Doncic is playing at an MVP level, maybe the best basketball of his career. The pecking order is defined, blah, blah, blah. And it all came crashing down in one night in Bricktown where they just got their butts hammered. It was clear that they weren't on the same level as the Thunder. And then their number one and number two option both get injured with ailments that probably keep them out through the first round of the playoffs, and because of that, probably through the whole playoffs, because I don't think there will be a second round for the Lakers.
Which is wild to say based off of how they were playing recently. But I want to ask you about a team, and I've asked you about them before, but I watched last night, and there's no Fred VanVleet. They'll get him back next year. But Houston's won 7 straight games, and right now, if the playoffs began, it would be Lakers-Rockets, and I feel like Houston's probably the side based off the form right now, yeah?
Yeah, and again, I was down there last month when the Lakers went through Houston and swept the baseball series, and it was clear that at that time the Lakers wanted to see the Rockets in the playoffs. Again, that's with Luka, that's with Austin Reeves in the lineup, and combining for 60-some-odd points per game. And so the Lakers are obviously the team everybody else wants to see. The Rockets have been playing better. And I really, I think that a matchup with the Lakers is the Rockets' ticket into the second round because, I'll be honest with you, if you're asking me, can the Rockets be a real contender, I don't think they can this year. I think there's 3 legitimate contenders in the West, and that's the list. OKC, San Antonio, and Denver, with the Rockets a distant 4th now. But if they can, if they get matched up with the Lakers in the first round, especially like Houston can still get home court advantage in that series, then, that's a pretty ideal situation for the Rockets.
Can the Clippers make anybody uncomfortable in the first round? Because it looks like, depending on how it goes down the stretch, they're probably going to take on OKC or San Antonio, depending on how the play-in goes. But look, as you've talked about and we've discussed, those two teams deserve their own tier. I'm not saying the Clippers beat either of them, but I'm sure if you're OKC or San Antonio, you'd rather see Phoenix or Portland or Golden State than the Clippers. Is that fair?
Just because the Clippers have Kawhi, who's obviously capable of winning a couple of playoff games, essentially just with his own dominance, I don't think the Clippers are going to be a real threat to beat either of those teams in a series, though, to be honest with you. The storylines are great. If it's Kawhi against the Spurs, as the Spurs return to the playoffs for the first time since he basically dumped them and tore the franchise down on his way out of town, that's a pretty good storyline.
Yeah.
If it's Shea versus the Clippers, who traded Shea essentially to get Kawhi. They traded him for Paul George, but it was to seal the deal to get Kawhi to sign. That's a pretty good storyline. But I think we better emphasize those storylines in the first 4 or 5 games because I doubt there'd be a game 6.
Speaking of Shea, has he locked it up? Has he locked MVP up? I mean, the numbers and odds indicate that the award is basically his. Any intrigue left with that award?
I don't think so. I really felt for a while now that Wemby was going to be the one guy who would have a chance, and his chance was going to be if the Spurs took the top seed from the Thunder. If OKC wins tonight in LA against the Clippers, then the top seed is sealed, and I do think that seals the MVP. And I got to say, Joker's performance against Wemby and the Spurs the other day is a reminder. Like, I don't think he's going to win the MVP, but this is a 3-time MVP who statistically is having the best season in his career. I just want to appreciate what we're witnessing from Joker as well. Honestly,
it feels like we say that sentence every season, right? I mean, even though he's not going to win the MVP every year, I mean, that's kind of how this award goes with. We know that here in Salt Lake, Carr won it twice when Jordan was clearly the guy. Maybe Jokic has spoiled us because he just continues to, quite frankly, improve as he ages, but we're just kind of used to it, yeah?
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. Statistically, it's his best season. I do think he regressed this season defensively. And then it's just hard. Like when the Thunder are going to win however many games, 65, 66 games, and Shea's averaging 32 per game on 55% shooting from the floor as a guard who creates off the dribble while doing all the other things he does. We're at a time right now where these are all-time great players in the primes of their career, and then here comes Wemby, who might end up being the best player of them all.
Yeah, and the narrative surrounding Jokic, and you know these guys in a way that the majority of our guests just don't, as far as him being, not in love with the game, or maybe at some point just wanting to go race his horses and drink his beer. How accurate is that? Like, is there really an actual chance that Jokic will tap out of this thing far before any of us believe that he should?
I don't think so. And, Malik Andrews sat down with him and did an interview this year. He pushed back pretty strongly about that. He's not in love with the fame, not the game.
Yeah.
He's not in love with the fame.
Yeah.
He doesn't love the whole celebrity aspect. He doesn't love the NBA culture. Frankly, I don't think he loves the American culture, but he loves the game. He loves the competition. He just doesn't love everything that goes along with it. But I think as long as Joker is playing at an elite level, he'll be playing not just in the NBA, but for the Denver Nuggets. And, obviously, knock on wood for his health, but his game's not exactly based on explosiveness and athleticism. I think he's going to age pretty well.
Can you corroborate the reports that Tim McMahon is in love with both the fame and the game?
I don't know a whole lot about the fame. I do love the game, though.
Okay, fair enough. While we're in the Denver space, since you covered him, Carolina hired a pro coach to coach their football team. It hasn't gone great. And Michael Malone lands in college at North Carolina, which is a premier job in that space. I just assumed that, like a lot of these guys, maybe like a Quinn Snyder, he would take a year off. Now, Michael, unlike Quinn, didn't go to Costa Rica to surf for a year. He actually worked for you guys. But what do you make of this? How do you think this is going to go for Michael Malone at North Carolina?
It's funny. I actually had dinner with Michael Malone a couple weeks ago. Brian Windhurst, who's on NBA Countdown, or was on NBA Countdown with him, and Michael Malone. And we were talking about, coaching opportunities, and he wasn't getting specific in his situation, but definitely talking about like what NBA jobs are going to be open. He's been rumored as a guy for a few of those. I did not see Carolina coming. Certainly, him going the college route didn't come up in that conversation. But when I saw it, it makes a lot of sense because his daughter is she'll be going into her sophomore season as a volleyball player at North Carolina. And the one thing that Malone said was just how much he's enjoyed getting to be a dad this year and getting to see, attend the vast majority of her games. And obviously he's taken a full-time job, a demanding job, a challenging job, but it's a great family situation for him where he'll be able to go at least to, the vast majority of her home games. And then, how's it going to work? The guy clearly can coach. I mean, he's a great basketball mind. I wonder a little bit about his patience coaching players of that age. He certainly didn't love playing young players for the Nuggets. It's one of the things that he butted heads with Calvin Booth about. Will he be able to recruit? In the NIL world, I don't know if that's as big a question just because, let's be honest, it's free agency is what college recruiting is now. But I would bet on this guy succeeding. I think he's a heck of a coach. And he's obviously going to go down there excited about a new challenge.
Since I brought up Quinn, Atlanta is 20-4 in their last 24 games, and they beat a lot of bad teams, but they also beat the Celtics. They also, there's a win in there over the Warriors. There's a win over there at Detroit. I actually watched that game. It was a great game. Have they made a case at all to be considered among the other top 4 teams in the East that we all continue to talk about?
Well, they're going to have a chance to make that case in the first round of playoffs when it's likely that they're going to see Quinn's old pal Donovan Mitchell and the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yep.
And it's been interesting because we're on the All-Star break. There was a lot of noise about, hey, could there be a change in Atlanta? Is Quinn in trouble? That obviously is quieted. And it's been a strange, successful season for the Hawks. But just think about how much their roster has changed, how many iterations of the Hawks roster there's been during the season. They open up the season and Trae Young and Kristaps Porzingis are two of the focal points on their roster. Obviously, both of those guys got traded during the season, but there's a lot of good things going on with the Hawks. Jalen Johnson's probably going to be an All-NBA player. They've got a guy to build around in him. There's some other nice young pieces, and C.J. McCollum was really just matching salary when they dumped Trae Young, but he's played awfully well for them. With him in the starting lineup, their numbers are extremely impressive. And so, they've got a pretty good pick situation moving forward, especially owning the better of the Pelicans or the Hawks in this year's draft. And, Atlanta's a team not just to keep an eye on in the playoffs, but I think really opening up a window for the next 5 or so years.
What are your thoughts on it? It's been so long since there was any direction in Chicago, and so long since that. I mean, look, you and I are close to the same age. We're used to Bulls basketball being something that it hasn't been in years. And Michael Reinsdorf, after cleaning house, he said, "Look, whoever we hire, they're going to have to be sold on my coach. He loves Billy Donovan and." Billy seems to be one of those guys, and I very much like him. Personally, I think he's a really, really good dude. But kind of there's a little Doc-ish going now where he's existing off some equity that appears like the statute of limitations of success has to expire at some point, doesn't it?
Yeah, that was a pretty uninspiring press conference by Michael Reinsdorf. It's been a pretty uninspiring era for Chicago Bulls basketball. They've been stuck in mediocrity. They finally kind of pulled the plug too late this season, which obviously Jazz fans can relate to. And then, the Billy Donovan thing, who are you trying to sell? Are you trying to sell Billy Donovan? Because the big question is, does Billy Donovan want to be in Chicago? Remember, it was basically Billy's decision to leave Oklahoma City. OKC was pivoting into a rebuild around SGA. His last year coaching was the bubble year when they had Chris Paul and Danilo Gallinari and Steven Adams, all guys that they moved out to tear down the roster around SGA and go into a full rebuild. And he sat down with Sam Presti. They had a couple of surveys. They talked it out, and Billy said, "Hey, I want to go somewhere else." I wonder if he regrets that decision. But the point is, what are they doing with this roster? Are they going to go into a rebuild? Are they going to try to quick fix it? I'm just telling you, if they try to quick fix it, you're going to be stuck back in the middle again. The path they need to take is a rebuild. They have cap space. You don't necessarily have to use that to sign players. You can use it in the trade market. You can take bad contracts. You can acquire picks. You can take the OKC path. I just don't know if Billy Donovan wants to be a part of that. As much as Reinsdorf is sitting there singing his praises and saying whoever we bring in has to work with Billy Donovan, I want to hear what Billy says.
For sure. We had your buddy Tom Haberstroh on the show this week, and A.J. DeBonsa, of course, played his college ball at BYU, and his family lives here in Utah. And we were discussing who AJ and his group would least want to get the number one overall pick if he's the guy that goes one. And it feels like Sacramento is the consensus answer there, but Chicago might have a case here. If you're in AJ DeBonsa's inner circle, which team do you not want to see pop up on lottery night?
I know. I mean, Sac, because there's market challenges. There's just organizational malpractice problems. Bad ownership is a really difficult thing to overcome, and I think that's been as bad an ownership situation as there is in the league. And say what you want about the Bulls, it is a major market flagship franchise, and if AJ's a face they're like a lot of teams. They need a face. They need a guy to build around. They don't have the guy to build around. If AJ Devanza is that guy to build around, that solves their biggest problem.
Yeah, no, for sure. Hey, I want to go back to something you said because I wanted to ask you about expansion, impending expansion with Seattle and Vegas. And you made a point about some of these generational players that are doing very special things. And oftentimes in the busy news cycle, we might forget that Nikola Jokic is historic and Shea is doing things that we haven't seen since Wilt. Is there enough talent in the pro basketball ecosystem to justify adding 2 more teams to a league that has a third of their teams unserious about competing for the final 2 months of the year?
I think those are two separate issues. The tanking issue is because teams are, because there's so much talent in the draft, because the draft's the best way for teams to acquire talent. It's not necessarily that there's a lack of talent in the NBA. The tanking issue is because the incentive structure tells you that losing is your best option when you're in those situations. But I'll give you an example. Look at Oklahoma City's roster. They've got 13 quality rotation players on their roster.
Yeah.
And then, the 14th and 15th man is a rookie lottery pick who's had some major health problems, and then the 15th overall pick who's sitting out this year because of a knee injury. There's plenty of talent to fill out 32 teams. I don't think that's the problem. The tanking thing is to me a massive problem and a separate issue.
So,
let me ask you this.
Yeah.
For example, just the Jazz clearly tanking. Could the Jazz have been could they have been a 36-win team this year? Could they have been or even a 38-win team? Could they have been like a solid, pesky little team if that was their priority?
For sure.
It's not like they don't want to be mediocre. They want to have a chance to be great. So this is the route they're taking, which makes sense. But my point is the Jazz's talent on their roster is not reflected by their win total.
Yeah, no, fair. I just think that conversation, your buddy Bobby Marks was raising that topic on NBA Today as to whether or not this is a good idea. But at the end of the day, we're all grown-ups, and we understand why the business of basketball is in a really good place to allow 2 teams in markets that will improve the bottom line, yeah?
Absolutely. And listen, the bottom line improves the second somebody pays $7 to $10 billion to own those franchises.
Correct.
It's just going to be a huge, huge, huge influx of cash to the tune of roughly $500 million per existing franchise. So yeah, it makes business sense, and I think from a basketball perspective, it's fine.
Any rumors about who these ownership groups were going to be? I think a lot of people, including myself, just assumed the LeBron stuff in Vegas was real, but that's been disputed. Any idea who the ownership groups are going to be?
Yeah, I really don't. I know, that there's people trying to put bids together. I don't know who's got the pole position or any of that stuff. The thing with LeBron though is he wanted to be an owner who didn't have to spend his own money to get it. He's rich, but he ain't NBA owner rich.
Right.
He's not multi-billionaire rich, and so it's kind of hard to buy an NBA team and run it when you're using other people's money. And the Fenway group that he's part of with I don't even know all the soccer crap, but whatever. They're not going to be bidders, and so that puts an end to LeBron's conversation right there.
All right, before I set you loose, the proposal, we've heard Steve Kerr talk about this. We've heard a lot of people talk about it. 65 games. Does it feel inevitable that the NBA is going to adjust their schedule?
I don't think so, because, again, it gets back to money. And who's willing to leave that money on the table?
Yeah.
How are you going to trim the schedule and not cut the revenue? So it is a business, and all the coaches want to do it, but the coaches don't want to take the what is that, a 20% reduction in the schedule? Any of these coaches volunteering to give 20% of their salary back?
Yeah.
I don't think the players want fewer games. They don't want to make less money. And so I just don't, from a financial perspective, I don't see how it would work.
All right, buddy. Great stuff today. Appreciate the time. Have a good rest of the week, and we'll chat soon.
Appreciate you, brother.
Tim McMahon covers the NBA for ESPN, and when the Jazz are relevant, he covers the Jazz for the Worldwide Leader. Always appreciate his time. You can get him on social media at Band McMahon is where you find him. Brought to you today by our friends at IFA Country Stores. IFA Step 1 Crabgrass Preventer and their lawn food gives your turf a strong start for months of thick emerald grass that will leave your neighbors green with envy. Provides a fast green up, helps your grass build up the energy it needs, and it defends against weeds only at ifa.coop or stop by one of their neighborhood stores today. All right, 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. Richard Smith joins us live in studio coming up for the 3 o'clock hour. We'll have some fun story time with Smitty. Andy Larson, our old buddy from the Salt Lake Tribune, will join us later on. Matt Brown, Extra Points. We'll talk some college football with Matt a little bit later. We do have a couple of updates on the college basketball transfer portal with both Utah and BYU being adversely affected as of now. We'll bring that to you later. And then we'll get to the 5 o'clock hour of the show, and we will say goodnight at 6 on a Wednesday afternoon. Keep it here on ESPN 700. Want to let you know that Muse is coming to the Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater on August 20th. Tune into the OC show at noon for your chance to score tickets because we're not allowed to give away tickets. Is that because I make fun of most of the bands that we give away tickets to?
I'm not sure. We got golf to give away.
Nice. We'll give away some golf later on.
Just depends on the week, I think.
But live in studio to illuminate, entertain, inform is Richard Smith. Hello, my friend. How are you?
I thought maybe you had another guest coming in.
No, it's just you, buddy. Let's right off the bat. Who's going to win the Masters? Who do you like?
Who's going to win the Masters?
What do you like?
Bryson DeChambeau.
No,
with his own clubs. He's bringing his own clubs.
Yeah,
he's making his own clubs now.
He's such a unlikable dweeb. I mean, why does he have to do every year? He's like, I got a 3D print. Shut up, dude.
Yeah.
Just play with the clubs that everyone else is playing with.
Hey, I'm at the rec center yesterday working out, and I'm in the big changing room there, and there's a guy in there with, I think I'm going to say his 8-9-year-old son, something like that, 8, 9, 10, and they're in there changing, and I just hear the son like around the corner say to his dad, "Dad, I for my birthday, I want a 3D printer. Can you get me a 3D printer?" And his dad goes, "Yeah, we're gonna have to talk about that with your mother." He goes, "No, Dad, come on, a 3D printer." I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, a 3D printer. I said, and I peeked around the corner. I said, and I think the kid looks like he's 10 years old.
Yeah,
a 3D printer. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't even know how to respond to that kind of thing. And then I read today, Bryson DeChambeau. He's got a 5-iron that he made himself.
Yep.
With a 3D printer, and he's trying to get that approved by Augusta National for tomorrow.
See, he just does himself zero favors. I know he's got a YouTube channel where he does cool, weird things, and like the younger kids like him.
Yeah.
But you remember when he said that he viewed Augusta National as a par 67 course?
Yep.
Like, shut up, man.
Yep.
You know, you're not going to endear yourself to your peers. There's a reason why that Brooks Koepka video of him rolling his eyes when DeChambeau was walking by explaining some nerdy golf thing got so much attention.
Yeah.
I know some people think he's changed the narrative about him being likable. I cannot he makes my skin just crawl.
Well, the Brooks Koepka little dust up they had, they parlayed that into the little thing down in Las Vegas that made them both a lot of money.
Yeah,
because people wanted to see, and they were hoping they were going to start going at it on the third fairway or something or whatever. And people then realized, wait a minute, have we been conned into this thing? Like, whatever. And
made for TV stuff.
Yeah.
The par 3 thing is pretty cool, though. I don't know if you tuned in at all this morning to see the players with their children. That's cool.
I saw a couple of the holes in one, and Keegan Bradley, and saw Kevin Hart drill one into the water, and Jason Kelsey, and then I'm thinking, okay, so now is this like a celebrity thing? Like anybody can just say, hey, Jimmy, hey, there's Jimmy in the crowd. Jimmy, come on, hit a ball, whatever. But I do have, Spence, a quick par 3 story for you.
Love to hear
from
it.
the Masters.
Let's
My
hear
only visit to the Masters, 2011. Charles Schwartzel, who's in the field this week, is won it that year. Everybody on the leaderboard in 2011 on Sunday had a legitimate chance to win the tournament, and that was the year Rory had his big meltdown on the back nine. And Charles Schwartzel ended up winning it by going birdie, birdie, birdie.
That's right.
Last 3 holes. And deservedly was the winner. But that early that morning, we were guests of Billy Casper, the former 1970 Masters champion, and went over and they have a little ritual when you go to the Masters where you can bring your own folding chair, and then when they open the gates, you go out on the course and you can put your folding chair down wherever you want to have it, and that's your spot for the day.
Okay?
And so we went there 6 a.m. Bobby Casper, who I know has been on this show before on the radio and the local TV doing golf. He brings us over in a van, and we're standing in line, and they open the gates eventually, and we get out and we put our chairs on the 18th green, so we'll have a spot later in the day for the big finish. And then my brother-in-law Bruce Nelson, who was the one who invited me to come with him, he says, well, hey, why don't we go, now we're here. The first guy doesn't tee off till 10:30. And we're there, and we've got our chairs down and everything, and it's 8:30. So now what are you going to do for 2 hours?
Jeez.
And so he says, well, hey, let's go walk around the par 3 course. I said, oh, yeah, okay. So we walk around.
So you're allowed to leave your stuff there.
Yeah,
okay.
you just leave your chair. And they have, if you buy a master's chair, which I did, they have a little spot on the back where you can put your business card, so it identifies you as your chair.
Got
right?
it.
And so the culture, the MO there is you put your chair down. Nobody can move your chair. People can sit in your chair if you're not there. But they have marshals on every green.
Okay.
So if you come up and someone's sitting in your chair and you go, "Excuse me, sir, that's my chair." The usual protocol is someone will go, "Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, no problem," and they just politely get up and then you sit in your chair. And if you put your chair there, and the marshal is watching it, so an hour later you're off somewhere else on the course, and someone comes and they say, "Hey, nobody's sitting there. I want to sit there," and someone tries to move your chair and put it in the back so they can put their chair down. A marshal comes right up. "Excuse me, sir, please don't move the chair."
Oh, that's good. Okay.
Yeah. So it works out. So we're on the par 3 course. We're walking around. We're looking at it and everything, and then we meander over to the clubhouse. And okay, and what do you want to do now? Well, let's well, we got time. Why don't we get something to eat? Because we had this all access passes from Billy and Shirley Casper, and which was I can never go to the Masters again. I don't think.
I was gonna say
because we were rolling in it this one year, and so we're going into the clubhouse, and who comes walking up the walkway is Billy Casper. And they say, "Hey, Billy, hey, guys, what are you doing? Hey, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah." He goes, "Yeah, what are you up to?" He goes, I got to meet somebody here in about 15 minutes to do an interview." They said, "Oh, what are you guys doing?" "We're just going to go get something to eat here." And he goes, "Well, here, you got a minute?" He says, "Here, let me show you something." We go, "Sure, yeah." So we walk in the clubhouse. We're walking up these stairs up to a second floor. And Billy's walking up, and my brother-in-law Bruce is walking up, and I'm behind him. And Bruce turns around to me as we're walking up the stairs, and he whispers, "I think I know where we're going." And so we walk up these stairs, and we're in this this nice living room area on the second floor of the clubhouse. And I go, "Yeah," and he goes, "Smitty, I just wanted you to see this. I think Bruce came up here with me last year." He goes, "But this is where we have the champions dinner." And I'm looking around, and it's just like a normal, like what you consider a normal living room setting in someone's house, like a large room, but furniture, a couple couches, a coffee table, whatever. And I said, "You have the champions dinner here?" And he says, yeah, right here. And I said, and I'm looking around, and I literally looked at him and said, "Well, I don't understand, Billy. Where do you have it? Where do you do it?" He goes, "Well, right here." They move all the furniture, they put it down the hallway, they bring in folding chairs and tables, and they set up folding tables and chairs, and they put tablecloths on the tables, and then everybody comes in, and guys come in, and they go, "Hey, is anybody sitting there?" And they go, "Well, Tiger was there a minute ago, but I don't know where he went." He goes, "I'm just gonna sit." And guys just grab a chair when whoever comes, first come, first serve.
There's not assigned seating.
No, not assigned seating. Folding chairs.
It's like you're at a cultural hall in an LDS church.
Exactly, Spence.
Wow.
It's like when you have the extended family over for Thanksgiving.
Wow.
And you set up the table over on the side for the little kids with the folding chair. That's exactly what it is. And I'm looking, I said, "Billy," I said, "that's what they do for the champions dinner?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "That is part of the great tradition of the Masters, is that, we could do it anywhere, right? We have any setting we want. We go to some fancy steakhouse. We do, whatever it is, right?" He goes, "But this is how Bobby Jones started it, and this is how we still do it today." And so they bring the food up, and they bring the food from downstairs, and they bring it up the stairs, and they serve it, and everybody's sitting around, and it's just first come, first serve. As you get there, where you're sitting, I sit over here, whatever, And he goes, and I'm like flabbergasted. I'm like, "This is unbelievable." And he goes, "I don't know how many people know this." He goes, "I know, right?" And then he goes, and come here. And so we go down the hallway about 20 feet, and there's a gentleman standing outside guard of a door. And he goes, "Hi, Ernie." He goes, "Mr. Casper, how are you?" And he says, "Hey, Ernie, I just need to show my friends here for a minute." And he goes, "Yes, sir." And he steps aside, he opens the door, and we go into this room, and it's the champions locker room.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And now it's a small space, And now, if you think about it, Spence, it was put together. It was built in the second floor of the clubhouse in a small space, like 30, 40 years ago. Okay, this is all we need, right? Now, all these years later, it's outgrown itself to the point where it's very nice, very very well appointed, and redwood cabinets and all this stuff, but not very big, to the point where everybody has to share a locker. So Fuzzy Zeller shares his locker with Tiger Woods because
probably not those two.
Yeah,
but, yeah.
no, because there's not enough room, and so Billy Casper shares his locker with Jack Nicklaus or whoever it is, and so they so they come in, they go, hey, do you have that drawer? No, I put my jewelry in the one. Yeah, you can use the second one. Oh, okay. And they hang up your stuff, put your cleats in, or whatever you do to play. I said, and again, I said, so you share lockers? He goes, well, Smitty, think about it. We have how many years of champions?
Yeah.
And, now it's outgrown itself. But again, the tradition is this is where all the champions come in, and this is where they locker. So you just make do. He goes, and so you fit in with somebody else, and they tell you, hey, we're moving you over here with Spence Checketts locker over here in the corner, or whatever. And, okay, and it's when you see the iconic picture, Spence, of the front of the clubhouse, up Magnolia Drive.
Sure, yeah.
And you get that iconic picture of the front of the clubhouse, right? The front doorway, or you see the little porch or the little archway that's over the front doorway, and there's a little landing, like a little balcony that you could walk out of or something right over that front door.
Yeah.
That's that door. That's where the champions' locker room is.
Oh, okay,
So
okay.
when you see that picture, you can envision it off that balcony. That door is the outer door to the champions' locker room. Okay.
Yeah.
And so we got to drive up Magnolia Drive that morning with Bobby Casper, and he had a special parking pass and all this stuff. It was unbelievable. Now, what's the kicker to the whole thing, Spence? On the Masters grounds, you are not allowed during the competition to have a phone, to have a camera. I mean, unless you're a licensed photographer or whatever, for working for the tournament. So I have no pictures of any of this.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is in my mind and my memory. And maybe it's better there than the pictures. I don't know. But what a great memory for me, and being hosted by Billy Casper, one of the true gentlemen of the game, and by Shirley, his wife, and their family. It was terrific experience for me. As I mentioned, my brother-in-law Bruce Nelson was the one who got us there, and was a good friend of Billy's, and just a great experience that I'll never forget, and probably in reality, and never be able to do it that way again.
Does Bruce need a new best friend? Because I wouldn't mind.
Yeah,
Okay.
hey, look, I'll give you a quick side story to that. Bruce knows Billy Casper. He's involved with his Billy Kids Foundation for years, and so Shirley Casper calls up Bruce on 1 year and says, Bruce, Billy wanted me to call you and ask you if you can come to the Masters this year, and had never been before. And Bruce goes, oh, this is great. Oh, my. And if you know my brother-in-law, Bruce, he's a big-time golfer. This is his thing. This is his life thing. Is I'm a golfer. I'm in the golf game. Whatever's going on, that's my thing. And he looks at his calendar. He says, can I call you back later? Sure, yeah, just call me back. Let me know. And he looks at his calendar, and it was an attorney here in town. I had a big case coming up. It was just one of those life moments, Spence, where he had something that was work-related he couldn't get out of. So he calls her back, and he says, Shirley, I'm sorry. I can't get out of this thing. I got to do this thing. And he says, I hang up the phone, and I just sat at my desk, and I just stared at the wall for about 10 minutes thinking, what did I just do? I turned down an invitation by a Masters champion to be their guest to go to the Masters because of a work thing. He goes, how awful is that? And then he's thinking, the other part of it is, well, they're never calling me again.
Yeah.
Because who says no to that kind of invitation, right?
Right, yep.
And so he was sick to his stomach. He couldn't believe he did it. Okay. The next year, Shirley calls him. She says, Bruce, I know you couldn't go last year. And Bruce goes, Shirley, thank you for the call. I'm gonna stop you right there. If this is an invitation to attend the Masters this year, I am giving you an automatic yes right now.
Nice.
Okay, I'm going to go. This is very nice of you to ask me again. If I have to quit work and retire early and whatever, I'm going to do it because I'm not passing this. And what happened? He ended up going, I think, to 6 straight Masters
cool.
As a guest of Billy Casper because he was close friends with them and got into the rhythm there and stuff. And you know, it was a great memory for him. And Billy Casper, his family rents a couple of homes there in the Augusta area, and they have one for their family and they have one for their guests. And you get together every night at Billy's house, and they have a big dinner for everybody. And then you gather around the living room and you sit around in a big circle, and everybody tells stories about what they did today on the golf course and who'd you see and what was the scuttlebutt and what do you think's going on and whatever. And it was actually, Spence, I know I'm being a little long-winded here in the story, but to give you one more layer to it. So I'm at this dinner Saturday night, first time. You know, hey, everybody, how you doing? There's like 40 people in the house. And everybody's looking around. They go, Billy goes, hey, Bruce, why don't you introduce Smitty to everybody? People haven't met him. Oh, this is my brother-in-law, Richard Smith, blah, blah, blah. Works for the Jazz or whatever. Blah. And everybody's, and a lot of them are Billy's friends from around here, and a lot of them are BYU people and all this stuff. And Shirley Casper says to me, Smitty, you work for the Jazz. Do you know a player at BYU? His name is Jimmer Fredette. And I said, yes, Shirley, yes, of course I do. She goes, boy, he's a really good player. And I said, yes, he is. He's really good, you know, and he's the National Player of the Year and all this. And she says, I think the Jazz should draft him. You know, I think that you guys could really use Jimmer Fredette. I said, that is a good idea, Shirley. I'm going to take that back to the group because that's that is very good. So you've heard of him? I have heard of him. Yes. You know, it's, you know.
Oh, that's great! What a cool experience.
No, it was one of those, you know, top 10 life sport things, Spence, that you can't you can't plan for, and you get invited to it, and you go, and you're expecting one thing, and it was one of those, you know, rare moments in life where you're expecting something and then it ends up being 5 levels higher than what you were expecting.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Because the weather was great that weekend, and the access we had and all that kind of stuff was just unparalleled. And one of the things I came away going, well, that was just one of the top, you know, all-time 10 experiences of my life, or something that I could never replicate, because that was just everything just fell right in line, and you know, it was a great opportunity for me that I was very grateful and thankful for.
Did you watch all 4 rounds?
No, so I was invited. So Bruce had the Caspers would give him 2 all-access passes for the whole week, so you could use them in any fashion. So he would he has four sons. 4 grown sons who were all into golf, and his sister, my wife, Linda, who got to go a couple times, and he would spread the wealth and invite someone to come for 2 days, and then somebody else could come for 2 days, and you know, everybody has families and work and all that kind of stuff. So I got to go for a Saturday and Sunday.
Perfect.
For the 2011 tournament, and ended up being a great tournament because of everybody in contention on Sunday afternoon on the back 9, and just worked out. For me, Spence, everything just fell in line, and the house we stayed at was a house they rented, and was kind of like a fraternity flop house, because there were like 20 people staying there, and people sleeping on the couches and on the floors and sleeping bags and whatever, and just having a grand old time, and just a great experience for me in the game of golf.
Tiger was in the mix on the back 9.
Everybody
with Rory, right?
Yeah, everybody was on. Whoever was on that leaderboard Sunday, Spence, as I remember it, again, literally everybody on there was within 2 or 3 shots coming to back 9, and anybody could have had a chance. And there was a lot of rumbling. And again, when you're on the course, for the people listening who watch it on TV, it's interesting because watching on TV is much more informative and really inclusive than when you're at the Masters in the middle of it, because you don't have a phone And so you can't be looking up like we all do now, constantly looking up who's in the lead and who's on what hole and all that. You don't know any of that when you're out on hole number 13 and watching the guys, try and come around that corner or whatever. And all you do is you're in the middle of the course, Spence, and you hear a big roar from 2 holes away. You hear, whoa, whoa, and everybody's turning around and go, what was that? And I remember one of the times I heard a guy go, I think it was Phil. I think he just put one in and everybody starts running, and people are running across the course, trying to figure out what's going on and whatever. I was in the restroom one time, and everybody's in there, and they hear this big run. I think Tiger just did something. Everybody's like running out of the restroom, and it's just wild the way the way it does that. But it's interesting because all you know is what's on the leaderboards around the course and what the scuttlebutt is from other patrons who are there, because you don't have any a device that's in your hand where you can follow that stuff and anticipate it and go, I got to run over onto 16 right now because Rory's about to tee off and he's only 1 shot down or whatever. You don't know any of that. All you know is what's on the leaderboards, and then you just have to, hustle and shuck and jive around the course and figure it out, like what's going on. So that's why it's fun to be on 18 on the back 9 on Sunday, because you're right there where everybody's coming in and you see the leaderboard.
This was the 80 final round for Rory.
Yes.
That's right.
No, that was when he had that collapse on the back 9.
Yeah, that's right.
And it was, I'll tell you what, that was the one thing that was palpable on the course. Like people could feel the murmur through the crowds where, oh no, Rory just had another bogey on 15. Oh no, And so when we're on 18 and we're looking at the leaderboard on 18 is manually operated by 3 guys. And so they're putting the scores up manually, right? So every now and then somebody would say, I think Phil's just finishing on 16. I wonder what he did. And the guy would pull the little scorecard, the little number off the board, and then he'd look through the hole, like at the crowd, like, are you waiting for something? Mm. And the crowd would start yelling at him, just put the number up, put it up, what is it? Is it going down or is it going up? And the guy would look around, and the crowd would yell for 10 seconds.
So he's like messing with people a little bit? That's hilarious.
It was funny.
That's
and he'd
funny.
be looking, and he'd like, get a look on his face like, oh, are you waiting? Are you waiting for it? And then his face would disappear, and then he'd put the number up, and then, oh, no, whatever. Yeah, it was fun.
Rory had a 4-shot lead going into the final round. Yeah. He went 65, 69, 70, and an 80 in the final round. Oh, man. And he finished tied for 15th.
Yep.
You referenced Charles Schwartzel won the tournament. Jason Day, Adam Scott tied for 2. But among the names in the mix with the Masters you attended, Luke Donald, Tiger Woods, Angel Cabrera, Justin Rose, who's still doing it, Steve Stricker, Freddie Couples was tied for 15th. Rory finished tied for 15th. I could keep going, man. But you saw a hell of a tournament.
I'm telling you, every name, I don't know how many names they put up. Is it 12 or 15? I can't remember how many fit on the actual leaderboard on the course. But whatever it was, on the back 9, every player had a legitimate shot, like if somebody got an eagle on 15 or somebody happened to hole one on 16 or something like that, could have taken the lead. And so it was
cool.
Interesting. Yeah, it was fun to be there for that.
Sunday, which hole were you posted up at?
Well, I was going around.
Oh, you were walking around.
Yeah, we were walking around. And then as it got to that point, we had put our chairs on the front row on 18. So we're like, hey, let's go. Well, we did that. As I mentioned earlier,
8:30 in the morning.
We got there at 6:15.
Oh, geez.
For the gates that don't open till 8:30.
Okay.
Bobby Casper gets an extra 10 points for that because he knew the routine, and he had said, "You guys want to be on 18 tomorrow? Meet me at the house at 6 a.m." 6 a.m. Bobby, the first guy doesn't go off till 10:30. He goes, "You want to be on the 18th green with the chair in the front row? Meet me at the house." We got a big van. He drives down Magnolia Drive. We get over there at like 6:20, and we're standing there for over 2 hours waiting until they open the gate.
Yeah.
And then they were only letting 10 people at a time. We were probably in the group of the first 30 people that were there. And by the time they opened the little rope or were letting people in, it was a huge mass of people, but we were right there, and we got to be like the second or third group of 10 that they led onto the course. And so because they said the year before they had an issue where they just let the ropes down, and it was a big mass, a cattle drive onto the course, and a few people got knocked over and got hurt and stuff. So now they're going to only let 10 people at a time, and there were a couple of Georgia state policemen standing there monitoring it, and 10 people go, and then after 20 seconds, okay, the next people can go, and so forth. And we got our chairs right on the front row of 18, so we were there to see all the leaders come in the last hour and a half or so, and it was fantastic.
Are the Tiger roars different? Everyone says the Tiger roars are different when the gallery's following Tiger.
Yeah, you know what the thing is? The vibe on the course is that there's people following Rory, people following Phil, people following Freddie, and then a whole nother like 10x of people following Tiger. And the vibe around him and just the massive swarm, if you're up in a drone or something and going overhead and you just see the massive people, you knew that that's where Tiger was on the course.
Yeah.
Well, you didn't have to see Tiger. You just knew, oh, look at a huge group of people. Oh, Tiger's over there.
Yeah,
right
yeah.
now. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's called Radio Magic. That is a 26-minute radio segment, and I said 10 words.
Yeah. Well, there you go, Spence. That's the danger you have of inviting me to be on the show.
What you don't understand is you just did me a frickin' service, okay? It was 4 hours every day. So you want to dominate a segment, Smitty, be my guest. I mean, look, unless you want to talk about John Conchar getting a triple-double, I think your master story is a little more interesting than anything going on with the Jazz right now.
Well, I'll tell you what, the vibe there, and I can't believe it was 15 years ago. 2011 I went. And, that the vibe on the course, I'll tell you what, anybody who's a golf fan, anybody who's never been to the Masters, who aspires to go someday to get a ticket, what have you, I'll tell you what, the grounds are immaculate. And how about this, Spence? Of all the major sporting events I've been to in my lifetime, which is I've been very privileged and very, very blessed to be able to do a lot of things over my years. The Masters, you go there, one of the high-profile sporting events in the world, right? You go over to one of the tents where they're selling refreshments, food. You get in the line, Spence. I'll have a ham and cheese sandwich. I'll have a bag of chips. I'll have can I get a chocolate chip cookie, and I'll have a drink, okay? There's nothing, no advertising is allowed on the course. Mm-hmm. So there's no Titleist, there's no Nike, there's no Coca-Cola, there's no nothing. Even at the refreshment stand, you get a Diet Cola. You don't get a Diet Coke. You don't know what brand it is because there's no branding allowed of any sort on the course from any manufacturer of anything. So I get a sandwich, a cookie, chips. I get a drink. Cash register. Woman brings it up. Yes, that'll be $4.50. No. This is all. These are all mine. Yeah. I said it's $4.50, and she says yes. The sandwich is $1.75. The chips are 50 cents. I go, what?
Still to this day.
Yeah. Wow. Well, this is 15 years ago.
Yeah. So, It's still.
But that everybody has had the same experience over the years that I've talked to. You go to anything else, Spence. Go to NBA Finals. I've been to the U.S. Open tennis tournament 100 times over the. You go to any of these things. You buy the same. You buy those same items. It's going to be $45-$50.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, that's what you expect.
Yeah.
At the Masters, $4.50. I was like, you got to be kidding me. But that's one of the things of the Masters. They control all that stuff.
Yeah.
Now you go to the big warehouse that they set up, the temporary warehouse, to sell the hats and the shirts and okay.
You're paying top dollar.
Now it's a different story.
Right.
That's right. Yes.
It's not $2 for a Masters hat.
That's exactly right. In fact, when I went and bought a bunch of stuff for friends and relatives and people that you work with and all that kind of stuff, and I said to one of the guys there, "Hey, do you guys know how much? You have any idea like what the average sale is?" And the guy goes, "Well, last year, the average sale per customer was $620.
Whoa!
And I said, "Really?" He goes, "Well, think of it. Look at yourself right now. I'm assuming that stuff, all that stuff you got in your arms there, is not just for you." I said, "No, you're right." He goes, "Yeah, everybody comes through. They're buying stuff for the two people they work with at the office. They're buying stuff for their neighbor. They're buying stuff for the guys they play with. They're buying stuff for their two brothers who said, hey, you're going to the Masters. Make sure you bring me back a hat or a shirt or something, whatever. And who was I buying for? I was buying for guys like Memo, who was telling me, hey, Smitty, you're going to the Masters? I go, yeah, I'm going this weekend. He goes, hey, give me some stuff.
Yeah.
I said, okay. I said, what stuff do you want? He goes, I don't know. Just bring back a bunch of stuff. I said, well, how much money you want me to spend? Smitty, I don't care how much money you spend. Just give me some Masters stuff. You know, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm talking to Memo. Okay, he's in a different financial world. Okay, I don't care how much it costs. Just get me some stuff. Yeah.
Did he write you a check before you left is the question.
No, Memo, I bring back, Memo, here's your stuff. He goes, here, hold on. He pulls out a wad.
Just a wad of cash.
Is that enough? I said, well, he goes, yeah, and he a couple more. Is that enough? I go, yeah, that's enough. Yeah, okay.
You should have told him to keep going. Like, no, just keep breaking off the hundreds.
No, Memo's a very avid golfer.
Yeah, you've told me.
In San Diego.
Yeah.
He belongs to the two highest rent clubs in the San Diego area and plays all the time.
Don't recall you bringing anything back for me, Smitty.
See now how you go. So I have it for you.
Oh, you do?
But I've been holding it back
for
until
15 years.
Until you were of the age where you would appreciate it.
Fair.
And it would be something that you would wear proudly.
All right, we'll catch a break. You need to clip that segment for posterity. You need to just told the master story, Smitty. All right, coming up next, we'll talk NBA. There's nothing to talk about with the Jazz. I do have a question about the draft. We'll get to that. Don't forget, we've got Andy Larson and Matt Brown later on, but Smitty live in studio for another segment coming up on ESPN 700. Local celebrity Richard Smith is live in studio. Our guy's getting recognized at lunches across the landscape for his dynamite work on this radio show.
It's unbelievable, Spence. I don't know how I get out in public at times, but okay, maybe we have to discuss in my next contract about some kind of security stuff going around town. But okay.
Yeah, we'll renegotiate the contract that exists right now. Yeah, recognized at lunch. I mean, look, like I told you when you took this job, you better be prepared for the fame, Smitty.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, that guy said, told me, I'm trying to talk my brother and I listen to Spence's show all the time, and we love Gordy. He said we love you and Gordy on there, because you guys know what's going on at the inside, whatever. And I said, well, that's very kind of you, very nice of you to say. And he goes, yeah, but just so you know, I got to be honest with you, I love this tanking thing. I think they're doing the right thing. And I said, well, then we're going to agree to disagree on that. But but he goes, no, but you guys, we love the insight you bring, and we love listening to you. I said, well, you and your brother listen. That's great. I said, if you get 2 more of your friends to listen, then we can double our audience, and then we'd be all set. We'd be ready to go.
A little hurtful, but okay, that's fine. That's fine. We were talking off air about the Bulls situation, how they clean house, and then Michael Reinsdorf, Jerry's son, who's the CEO of the operation, gives a presser and essentially says, whoever I hire has to ride with my coach. And you made the point, which is very correct based off of all the data that we have, is whoever you hire to run basketball operations is going to want to hire the coach that he wants to coach the team that he puts together, right? And, I said this on air once, and Dennis got mad at me. In my opinion, the first day Dennis Lindsay took the job was Tyrone Corbin's last day as coach, because I just felt Dennis, with all of his connections, had someone in mind. It turned out to be Quinn. Talk about that dynamic, though, because you were a part of it. Scott Layton, Kevin O'Connor, Dennis Lindsay. You want your guy, unless you have the guy who's named Jerry Sloan, then you just ride with that guy, right?
Yeah, and it's not unlike any other company setting, Spence. You have to be able to hire whoever you want to have, the control of your business, your operations, in whatever line of work you are, and then allow them to have people working for them down the chain, so to speak, that will report to you, that have the best interests of what you're trying to convey, what you're trying to do, in regards to making decisions in that particular business. So if we're talking about professional basketball, when the Utah Flash, which was the originator, before the Utah Stars, was in when the D League first started in the NBA, and they decided they were going to have a franchise down in Orem. Ended up being the Utah Flash, and Brant Anderson was the owner. And Brant, I was responsible from our organization at that time to coordinate with the D League team, and got to know Brant and Joe Brown very well. Had a great working relationship with them. But when they got started, they were looking for just information and direction on how do we set this thing up, how do we go about setting our business model. And I had them meet with, got them together with Frank Layden, because Frank obviously was the architect of the Jazz from the beginning, and Frank knew a lot more than me about all the ins and outs and what needed to be done business-wise, and also on the basketball side. And they had a great meeting with Frank, and they had all these ideas at the time of who they wanted to hire as the coach. And Frank kind of talked them off the ledge a little bit and said, well, you can't hire a coach, because they wanted to go get some kind of a BYU guy, and that would attract immediate interest down in Utah County. And Frank said, you have to hire whoever is going to be the top basketball guy. You have to hire that person first, and then you have to allow them to go ahead and hire whoever the coach is going to be, the assistant coaches along with the coach, the training staff, the support staff, everything, because you have to have the person on top of that chain of command be responsible to hire the people that are working for them, so that you have a logical chain of command. You can't hire a coach and then have them in place, and then come and hire someone who's going to, quote, supervise them, because you've already set the standard for who has the power in this organization, who has the leverage. And so what they're saying about the Chicago Bulls and trying to identify someone who will come in and run basketball but still have Billy Donovan there's going to be a good question, I think, knowing Billy a little bit that I do, and knowing him way back when the Jazz drafted him and brought him to training camp, and seeing all of his success over the years at Florida and in the NBA. But Billy may not want to be in that situation. He may want to say, well, who are we going to hire, and maybe it's time for me to exit stage left, and you guys can start fresh and clean with the new guys running it and new guys coaching it, and bring new players and whatever you're going to do. And so I don't think it's a slam dunk that Billy's going to necessarily stay there automatically. I think Michael Reinsdorf is probably saying these things at the moment, to give Billy a vote of confidence that don't worry about things. We're going to work this out together, kind of thing. Which the working out together may be Billy deciding that hey, we're going to handshake and move on, whatever. So I don't think that's necessarily set in stone that Billy will be there next fall, given how these things are going to play out in the coming weeks.
Do you think Danny had Will in mind? If because and look, I know you're not in those rooms anymore, and I want to be clear, I don't know either. The smoke screen they put up, the front they put up, is that they wanted Quinn to stay, and they held that presser, which
one of the most uncomfortable, weirdest press conferences I've ever seen in professional sports. To me, I was sitting at home and I was watching that, Spence, and I literally got uncomfortable sitting there. I'm thinking, like, is anybody really buying like what anybody's saying in this thing? It was just, I thought it was very, very unusual, and it was very uncomfortable as a view of someone who knows a little bit about how those things tend to work behind the scenes. It just seemed like it wasn't, you weren't getting, even a quarter of what the real story was, in my opinion. And how that. I mean, who holds a press conference with the coach that is going out, who's leaving, whether he's leaving on his own, or you're asking him to leave, or you have a handshake agreement, or whatever it is. I was trying to remember the last time that scenario happened, where you saw the coach of the Chicago Bears, who has just been fired, having a press conference with the new president of basketball and the new owner, and that they're all, I don't know. It was just very, very unusual.
No, my antennas went up because I was watching too, and my question was, why? What are we doing? Why do you feel like you need to do this? I mean, it's different. Like when the Darren Jerry stuff went down, and Jerry decided to retire, they held a presser because Jerry was retiring.
Right.
And look, you have more experience than I do in this, but I've been around it my whole life too. And I was trying to think back, like, has this ever happened before?
Yeah.
Has there ever been a press conference where the new owner, the new president of basketball operations, calls the media together? And oh, by the way, the old ownership is sitting there as well, because Quinn actually thanked the Millers.
Yep.
So you have a coach who has just decided to move on, and the old ownership group is sitting to your left, and you as the new owner and the new president of basketball ops are addressing the media. Is it spin to try to tell everybody that you tried to hang on to him? Were you trying to get the message out like, no, we actually wanted Quinn to stay? Because the message was, the line that Quinn kept using is, I didn't see a pathway forward. That's what he kept saying. But knowing Quinn the way I do, and you obviously knew him as well, I would love to get an honest moment from him about what that was like, because he didn't look like he was very comfortable with the whole thing either.
Yes, and I would agree with that. That was part of the uncomfortability, if that's the word to use, that I was watching it, the lens I was watching it from. That he seemed to be a little bit awkward. Danny Ainge was touting, all of his strengths as a coach and how he's one of the better coaches in the NBA. And I'm sitting there watching him going, yeah, and as far as I know, and I don't know for sure because I haven't, not privy to the paperwork of a contract, for the other individuals. But everybody's understanding is that Quinn still had 2 years left on his contract. And I don't know the last time, Spence, that an NBA coach walked away from a job that they were still under contract for. It's just like, and you had a good team. You had all-star players at that time in Rudy and Donovan and obviously those things were already churning in the background and were ready to explode in a different way. And maybe that was part of the conversation. I don't know that. I wasn't there. But there were so many different layers to it that weren't uncovered in that press conference they held that day. That may, if you were a basketball fan, I thought there'd be a lot of questions that the media there, the press would have about now what exactly is going on or whatever that I don't think were answered, and I still don't think have been answered to this day.
Are we left to surmise that once the decision was made to break the roster down, because there's that famous Brian Windhorst clip after they traded Royce, like, he did the whole what's going on in Utah. And then a few days later, it was Rudy, then it was Donovan. It was the Goodfellas scene with Eric Clapton and Derek and the Dominoes in the background playing the Layla outro. And every time my phone would give me an alert, another Jazz player was gone. And here we go. Okay, breaking it down. Is it safe to surmise that when they decided that this was going to be a full rebuild, Quinn was like, I don't really want to do that?
I certainly think that that's one possible scenario that may have been going on behind the scenes. I don't know any of that. It would seem logical to make that assessment that, why would anybody give up an NBA job that they have, where they're under contract, where they have a good team that's competitive, that just come off the previous year having the best record in the NBA. Okay, who leaves that job like of their own accord? Unless something like that was in the offing and they knew it and they didn't want to be part of that. And it may have been some discussion about, well, I don't think we should do that. I think we should stay the course. I think we got a team and we got something going. And, but then you had a new person coming in as an owner in Ryan Smith. And then you had a new person he brought in the next year as the head of basketball in Danny Ainge. And, it's not unusual in professional basketball when you have a new head of the basketball side of it, of the sports side in any professional sports, where the head man, doesn't either like the team that they're inheriting or they don't like the players they see in front of them and they want to do it a different way or whatever. That's not unusual. What was unusual, Spence, was that this was happening to a team that was at that moment in time a top 5 NBA team, and coming off that year, if I remember right, both a top 5 offensive team, a top 5 defensive team, the only team in both those statistical categories, the best record in the league, had won the most games of any team in the Western Conference the previous 5 years. Okay, had stumbled a couple times in the playoffs. Okay, that happened. But when you take the whole body of work, and they were the foundation was headed up by 2 all-stars just coming into their prime. You don't see that happen in any sport because you're just at that point. If you got that in place, then you're just trying to ride that wave for as long as it goes.
Yeah.
And the decision was made to do it completely differently, and that obviously that was their decision. And in that regard, I would again make a guess that I don't know that part of that was the Quinn Snyder departure, that he didn't want to be part of something where they were tearing apart or about to tear apart something that was working well at the time, and that there was one of those behind closed doors. Let's agree to disagree. Okay, we can all be friends. Okay, it's just you want to do it a different way. I want to do it this way. Okay, we can we can do it amicably and what have you. And that looks like what they did, and that looks like what that press conference to me was all about.
Danny was brought on. How long was Danny there while Donovan and Rudy were still around? Well, while that team was intact, how long was Danny there?
My memory serves right. He came in on the job in December, right around Christmas time, and he was there the rest of that year.
Okay.
So whatever that would be, 55, 60 games, something like that.
So not to speak for him or anybody else, I guess over the course of the final, 4, 5, 6 months of that group,
right,
Danny must have been the one that made the calculation like this thing is not going to work long term.
I would say so. I would say that would seem to be the most common logical thing, that he probably looked at it from the vantage point of someone new, someone coming in from the outside. So he didn't have any, he had no stake in the game, so to speak, in terms of having spent years building that group and putting it together and all that kind of stuff. He came in with a fresh set of eyes, looked at it from a whole different lens, looked at the Western Conference, looked at the other teams in the West. I'm guessing that he made an assessment of his own that I don't think these guys right now are good enough to get over that hump past these other guys. And so we're going to be better off tearing this down and starting from scratch and getting all the draft picks and all the stuff that they've been doing the last several years. That would be my guess as to what was probably going on behind closed doors.
Yeah, and it's interesting to try to understand exactly what went into that calculation. Of course, a lot of the media reports were was the friction between Donovan and Rudy behind closed doors, and Quinn himself a couple of times tried to play damage control during some post-game pressers, saying things like, no, they actually eat lunch together, and yes, in fact, Andy Larson is going to join us. Andy wrote a story about Donovan not passing to Rudy. And if I remember correctly, Quinn even addressed that, like, no, he actually does pass it to him. And, a lot of it was the reported, friction behind the scenes as to why Danny made his calculation.
Yeah, and that could be. And, again, I wasn't there during those months when that was finally decided upon, by, I'm assuming it's Danny Ainge and Ryan Smith as the principal owner at that time. And, when I was there, and I was there, from day one with both Rudy and Donovan, and had a relationship with both of them, getting them in, getting them acclimated, doing all those kinds of things, the first steps in being in Salt Lake City and being part of the organization until the time that I left. They had some what I would underline as minor basketball issues on the court and how to play. Those things can be ironed out. Those things you work on with the coaches and figure out. But look at the product on the court. Look at the success on the court, which couldn't be refuted because this is a zero-sum game. At the end of the day, it's about how many games you win. They were winning games. They were figuring it out. And they're both good guys. They're both good people off the court. So I think they were both smart enough to know we just have to figure this out. And I think even one time there was some scuttlebutt going on. Well, if there's anything really there, that you really have to be concerned about, I think they were aware of the Kobe Bryant Shaq thing and realized that, hey, those guys were winning, but they just couldn't figure out the personal thing, and they broke it apart themselves.
Yeah.
Let's learn from their history that when you have a good thing, and this business is so hard and it's so tough to win and to get that right chemistry, that right mix of guys, and all those things that our group had worked on for years trying to build, that if you have it and you discover it and it's working, and you got these other little things on the side that are trying to get in, to hamper it, you just try and figure it out the best way you can to keep this machine going forward. And I think that's probably where they were at. And then Danny came in and saw it differently, which is his prerogative, and had a different take on it. And then they decided to make the moves they made.
Yeah, I mean, I approach all this stuff, and I think the public is pretty fascinated with what relationships are like behind the scenes, whether it was Quinn and Dennis, whether it's Morgan Scalley and Kyle Whittingham, whether it's Donovan or Rudy. I always just try to equate it to what your life is like. Do you love Frank from Sales all the time? I mean, I saw Charles Oakley try to assault Greg Anthony in a practice once. Those Nick teams oftentimes were at each other's throats. A lot of personalities there,
Yes.
right? So I don't think it's that rare that you disagree with a coworker. You just go to work, you do what you do, and then you go home. But we're out of time. Let me get one thought from you on this, because we were debating this earlier. Jazz are going to hold on to their draft asset because, if they didn't, this whole thing would have been for nothing. A lot of conversation about some redundancy, a guy like Darius Acuff Jr. and Keontae George. Are they in a position where they can afford to focus on need, or because of where they're at in their process, is it just simply like, we think that dude's the best player, and so we are drafting him, period?
Yeah, my take on it, Spence, is that we were always of the mindset that no matter where you were at with the level of play of your team, that your responsibility was to get the best talent that you could get, and then it was on the coaching staff and it was on the front office to tweak some other things along the way to figure out how to best utilize the players you have and the talent you have. And so in that regard, my guess is that they would go into it, and whoever they determine has the best talent, the best skill to be able to succeed at this level is who they're going to try and add to their roster. Because, Spence, they're losing games, whether they're losing them on purpose or they're not playing seriously, or however you want to couch it. The bottom line is they're one of the worst teams in the league. And so one of the worst teams in the league, you have to add talent to that whenever you can get the talent, and then you figure out next Tuesday, how you're going to utilize it. So my guess is they'd be going into the lottery and then in the draft, in June, to try and get whoever they determine is the best player available to them to add to their group.
Smitty, great to see you. Fun stuff. Some fun story time today. Again, you need to clip this hour for posterity.
That's right.
It was a good look back.
Thanks, man.
Be well. We'll chat soon. The great Richard Smith live in studio for the 3 o'clock hour. Masters Week. That means it's the ESPN 700 Festival of Trees, powered by the Utah Golf Association. Giving away rounds of golf from the best courses in the state. Listen to Sean from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Listen to this show from 2 to 6 for your chance to win each day from ESPN 700. Details can be found on ESPN700sports.com. Text right now to 877-353-0700. Give me a Masters pick. Who do you think is going to win the Masters? At 877-353-0700, and we will pick one lucky winner for a round of golf at Sun Hills Golf. All right, 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Andy Larson is our guest coming up next on ESPN 700. Par 3 tournament at the Masters today before things get going for real tomorrow. Talk a little Masters golf throughout the course of the rest of the week to get you ready for the tournament and, of course, cover it the best way we can. Speaking of golf, our next guest, an improving golfer because he has more time on his hands. Am I correct, Andy Larson?
I don't know about more time, but it is differently oriented time. And so would like to be an improving golfer this year. I think the last couple of years it's been a declining golfer situation.
Here's my offer to you. If I gave you the chance to attempt on a par 3 at Augusta, if I said, Andy, you get one swing, and if you land on the green, you win $10 million, and if you don't, you spend a year in jail, would you take that offer?
No.
No?
I'm shaking the heck out of that. I mean, I can't hit the green on number 9 at Nibley. I can't do anything at Augusta.
Okay, what if I said $30 million if you hit the green, 6 months in jail if you don't?
I don't need to spend 6 months in jail. I'm living a happy life. I don't need the $30 million they're giving. I don't know. No,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, the odds are bad.
Porter, what terms would you accept? One swing Augusta, you hit the green, you're generationally rich. You don't, you lose your freedom.
I'm taking all of the above. I'll take the hit.
Have you ever been?
I'm not scared of jail.
Have you ever been in jail?
No comment.
That's not the spot. I'll just tell you that. Andy Larson, Salt Lake Tribune. Give us an update, young man. You are now off the Jazz beat. What is taking up your time?
Yeah, I'm a full-time data journalist columnist for the Salt Lake Tribune. So been looking at all sorts of really interesting data sets from like really kind of serious stuff like ICE deportations to we just released an airfare article this week, or series of articles this week. Got one coming up on like plastic surgery stats in a couple weeks. So kind of like the gamut of how numbers and kind of life in Utah interact, which has been really fun. Like, it's let me be curious about a whole bunch of different topics. It's obviously freed up like my nights and weekends a little bit, obviously less travel. It's been really good so far. I've liked it a lot.
I want to ask you about some of your work you're doing, and then it is a sports talk radio show, so we'll do some other stuff as well. I love our airport, and I love the fact that I can get there in 15 minutes with no traffic. I grew up in a footprint where we had to leave 4 hours early to get to JFK after sitting on the Van Wyck, which just was miserable. But you did a piece recently, the 5th most expensive airport in the U.S. I found that interesting. Unpack this for us.
Yeah, so there was this new data set that the federal government switched to last year that actually gives the public kind of access to 40% of all tickets sold in the United States on domestic travel. And so we have that data for July through October of last year, and you can use it to look at, ticket by ticket, what people are actually paying for airfares everywhere in America. And so, if you do enough data nerdery like I can do, and it's about 50 million rows overall, and you can find that, that Salt Lake City Airport is the 5th most expensive. And, I think that's kind of fits with the experience of a lot of people here, is that they are kind of paying more than they expect for airfares out of Salt Lake. And a lot of it is because we are a Delta hub where, 2/3 of round-trip flights out of Salt Lake are Delta flights. And there are a lot of destinations that only Delta is flying to, or, at least certainly direct. And then there are just places where you can't get competition, or there's not very frequent competition on other routes. And with a growing market like we have here in Utah, like the fares just are going up. So looked at the data, talked to Airport Executive Director Bill Wyatt about it for an hour, and kind of said, try to figure out, are there things that can be done about this?
And are there?
So the airport has to play a dance here, right? Like they enjoy having Delta here as a hub, and I think that's good for Utah overall in terms of jobs and destinations to international markets, and heck, domestic ones too. But they do want to expand kind of the routes that Delta doesn't consider particularly important. So the way he put it is, it would be stupid of him to go out and get route competition to Atlanta. But, the airport did add a Spirit flight to Orlando, and all of a sudden you saw fares drop to Orlando. Frontier's expanding out of Salt Lake City. And then now you've got the Provo Airport too, flying Breeze and Allegiant and even American out from down south, and there is more competition than there used to be. So, and now the airport expanding more, even more at the end of this year. There are 11 new gates opening up. They can use some of those for kind of secondary airlines, competition airlines to Delta, and really kind of force them to push those prices down a little bit. I think that's the hope. I don't know that, it'll happen to a huge degree. I think a lot of kind of competing airlines see Delta as entrenched, and why would you compete with them when everyone here has SkyMiles accounts and everything else? But, I think it is a trade-off. We get to go more places, but those places are more expensive.
Interesting stuff. I also see that as a result of, well, I guess this isn't entirely new, but maybe because of your new area of responsibilities, you are arguing with people on the internet about politics. How's that been for you?
Honestly, I feel like I've always done for my whole career, like one political post a month. And I think like the reaction to that has changed over the course of time as like Twitter has evolved. Some of the left-leaning people left to go to Blue Sky. Obviously, like the content moderation got very different as when the site was bought by Elon Musk and changed to X. And frankly, just like good content doesn't get promoted as much as like, the kind of the accounts that make you angry or looking for, that kind of feedback in other ways. So I think it's like less useful as a news source and less useful as a politics conversation app than it was before. But like, I wouldn't say that it's going great, Spence.
I just don't have the bandwidth to argue with these cowards. I've always been impressed that you seem to hang in there with that energy that I just can't seem to sum it up.
I mean, I'll say that like I've now got a blocker on my phone that I've installed in the last 10 days. It's like, don't be on Twitter for more than 15 minutes a day. So we'll see how long it lasts. But it is. We're there. Like it's just not that additive anymore, and that sucks because it's a really good community that I've been on Twitter since 2008, I think it is, and like got me my job to some degree, or at least built an audience for me on Jazz Twitter. And it's sad that a lot of like the good sports accounts that were on there have or not all of them, but many of them have left, and it's just the conversation's not as. I think the signal isn't there compared to the noise as much as it used to be.
Yeah, well said. I joined in 2009. I was a little bit late to the party, and I felt like once upon a time it was almost like mandated for my job. I just don't feel like that anymore. Do you still? Because you've got you got a sizable following. Do you still feel like you need to be posting?
No, because I mean the metrics show that the Tribune and myself aren't getting any benefit from it, or at least certainly not the benefit we once did. I mean. It used to be that 20 or 30% of our traffic on an Andy Larson story would be from Twitter, and now it's 1 or 2%. And that's just the way that the algorithm devalues links and has promoted, kind of the verified accounts that you have to pay for. And I think that's a conflict of interest ethically for us to do a ton of that. Like it just, it used to be a really, really beneficial thing for journalists to get their work out there, and now it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, too bad. I agree with you. Once upon a time, it was a lot of fun, but here we are, and time to move on. Let me ask you, I want to do a little RSL to end, but before we get there, I do want to do a little jazz. So the debate we've been having here, they're going to hold on to the asset because, well, they've been very intentional in doing so. Looks like they're going to finish bottom 4. Slight chance it's bottom 5. Very minuscule chance that's out of the bottom 8. If it's 4, it's basically impossible. If it's 5, there's a small chance. But as the odds say, Andy, as I remind people, last year, the most likely landing spot via the percentages was 5, and that's where they landed. I'm hoping that we get a little lottery luck. But if they end up at 5, 6, 7, which is the most likely option as of now, they run into this interesting group of players where, like, I think they need a lead guard. I think Kingston Flemings would be a great choice for them. There's a Darius Acuff Jr. angle. But he's a lot like Keontae, right? So with where they are at now and what they're trying to do next year, is there any consideration as far as what position a player plays or if he's too similar to another player? Or is it just simply we need talent, we think he's the best dude, we are taking him?
I still feel like they're early enough in this rebuild and these pieces are movable enough that you probably just have to go best player available. But I do think that comes with like the caveat of what a player is worth in today's NBA. So like I like Darius Acuff a lot. He's done some incredible things. He might be the best offensive player in this draft. I mean, it's him or AJ, right? Like it is incredible. Trae Young was just traded for negative value, and like Trae Young was probably outplayed where people thought he was going to be in terms of a quality scorer. He is a one-man offensive engine who was just traded for peanuts. And so like, I don't know that I'm excited about the Darius Acuff, even though, he might average 25 points a game in the NBA, and I actually feel pretty good about that. But, like, does he do everything else? We just saw Cam Thomas get waived and is out of the league, even though he's a 25 points a game scorer. I think you need players, and I do think Austin Ames thinks this way, that can do it all on both ends of the court. And I think they are tired of being the worst defensive team in the NBA, and I would expect them to add pieces that help out with that. Now, the good news is, you get Jaren Jackson Jr. and Walker Kessler next year, right? Like, they should be better. But I think they want to defend 1 through 5. I think they want to have pieces that are positives, or at least not huge negatives on that end of the floor. And so I would be kind of surprised if they went in kind of the Acuff direction, even though he is ridiculously talented offensively. Like a Keaton Wagler or a Braden Burries, like someone who brings it on kind of both ends, or at least has the potential to, I think, is a much more logical draft pick for the Jazz, or really any NBA team, than someone kind of who's one-sided as much as Acuff is.
Unless you want to talk about Bez and Bang's career high or John Conchar messing around and getting a triple-double, we'll stay in this angle for a minute. When it comes to the top, if they luck into one, is there any doubt? Or is it just AJ? Don't think about it, just take it. Just take him.
I mean, I think you think about it a little bit, but I think AJ just was significantly enough better and is so much less risky than the other two top 3 guys. Like he I think clearly cares about basketball. I think he clearly is extremely talented. He's got all the size and athleticism in the world. And there just are questions about Darren Peterson and Cam Boozer that you just don't have to worry about with AJ, right? Like Darren, I am extremely worried about the brain. I'm a little worried about the motor. I'm worried about the availability. I'm worried about just, frankly, that he wasn't efficient when he did play this year. And Cam Boozer, I could not defend against like Siena, and that's really worrying for me as well. Like has done some incredible offensive production stuff, and I think is going to be a very good NBA player, but I worry about him playing both sides of the ball. Kind of the post-up style, whether or not that super translates amazingly. So, yeah, I'd take AJ. I think most teams take AJ. It would be it would be shocking, and not just because of BYU ties. I think just because he is kind of the clear-cut number 1 after this year.
Speaking of the BYU ties, there's some interesting narratives going around and interesting conversations going around. And look, the fact of the matter is, as you know as well as anybody covering this team for a while, draft, develop, retain. You can check the first 2 boxes. They have not been able to check the third on a number of different occasions. So you've got a narrative of Carlos Boozer as a scout for the Jazz, and Carlos Boozer played for the Jazz. So Cameron might be willing to live in Utah for longer than 7 years. Then you've got a narrative of A.J. DeBonsa, played for BYU. He knows Ryan Smith. His family lives here. And so maybe he'll be more inclined to live here longer than 7 years. Are you buying any of those conversations?
I don't think it changes who you take. I think if you like Darren Peterson over Cam Boozer, I think you take him because you do have 7 years of cost control. And that's, your window. That's the foreseeable future. I mean, so many of these guys are traded so early in their NBA careers right now. Not just Utah Jazzmen, but just NBA players that, like we just said, Trae Young was just traded. They're players who we kind of thought would be X guy for life, and they just aren't. There's too much player movement. So it would not be in the list of top 20 things I'm considering. Like I'm considering their playmaking, the rebounding, the defense, how they get along with teammates, whether they're coachable, all that kind of stuff, above whether or not we can predict how their brains are going to work in 8 years from now.
Was down there last week. Saw you down there. Shout out at rockbottomgolf.com. That's where Andy gets his balls and his clubs, and that's what I learned. It's a real site if you want discounted golf balls. and, try to get there as early as I could to talk to as many people as I could because I just haven't been down there a ton this year because, well, I had somebody say to me, Andy, and I want you to tell me if you think this is real, if you think this is messaging, if you think this is BS. He said, I would not trade Ace Bailey for the number 1 pick this year. To that, you say what?
That's, I don't know if that's messaging. I think that is hype. That is self-delusion a little bit. Like, if it had been, I will not trade Cooper Flagg for the number 1 pick this year. Yeah, and I think Ace Bailey is like an awesome prospect, but has not been super efficient this year. Is not a shoe-in for the All-NBA first team, or rookie team, right? Like all-rookie first team, I should say. It's going to be between him and a couple other guys. He's not a Rookie of the Year kind of candidate this year. I think I probably take AJ DeBonsa over Ace Bailey. With also being said, Ace Bailey has only impressed me this year and has only gotten better from March and April to what he was in October and November. And that trajectory is awesome. He's a great kid, so athletic, and yet, there are levels to these things. And Ace Bailey looks like he could be a future All-Star, and AJ, I think, has a decent chance of being the best player in the league in a way that would be really surprising to see from Ace.
If they get number 1 and they go AJ DeBonsa, what does that mean for next year? And maybe more importantly, what does that mean in 3 years?
Do you want me to pull a Tony Jones here and say they're winning the NBA championship?
That's exactly why I asked you the question, to see if you were willing to go TJ on us.
No, I mean, they'll have a really good team. They have a great team if they get AJ. There are pieces to figure out. We got to figure out if JJJ and Lowry can play together, or if Walker Kessler can be a starting center on an NBA championship team. They're just it just takes a long time to be good. I mean, there are only a handful of guys, and it's a small group that have won the title as the best player on the team within the first 3 years of their NBA career. And maybe AJ is one of those guys. That'd be great. And I think they would be one of the best teams in the Western Conference. But you look at the Thunder, and they are really established and going to be good 3 years from now. And you look at San Antonio, and they have Victor Wembanyama and a whole host of really great young players. So no, I would still, I can't think that they're favorites to win the title in the next 3 years if they get AJ.
All right, before I set you loose, I am standing on my feet. I'm shouting it out, Real. Okay, I'm clapping. I'm doing the thing. You were there on Saturday. I was not because it was cold, even though it ended up being 60 degrees. I know. We talked before, Andy. I told you I'm a fair weather fan.
Soft.
I am. And I could have even been in a suite. Still too cold. Stayed home, watched it on TV. And I also wanted to watch the college basketball. But nonetheless, I don't know, dude. It feels to me like Pablo's got something with this group. It's early. This is a marathon year. The World Cup throws some wrenches in with breaks. I just want to know where you're at as far as your belief level and what we've seen so far. How real do you think it is?
I think it's really real, actually. I think they're really good. Now, look, I don't think this is the same team that they're going to have at the end of the year. If I thought that Gozo would be with RSL at the end of the year, if I thought Diego Luna would be with RSL at the end of the year, we're talking about an actual MLS Cup contender, I think. But maybe they're not quite as good as LAFC and Inter Miami, who have two of the best players in the world. But this is a really good team. I mean, Gozo is a top 5 winger in MLS. He, at the age of just turned 19 last week, right? What he has done in the first few games is incredible. I'm so impressed with what Sergi Solans is doing up front. Your guy, Phil Quinton, has probably been the best defender for RSL this year. I guess among the back three. Huh. Are you buying that?
No, I'm not. But I just want to hear what you have to say.
Listen, he's has a number of assists. I can't tell you the exact number, but his passing out of the right center back spot has been awesome. He's actually been really good in one-on-one interaction and kind of defensive moments in a way that he has not been in the past. He's been really awesome. I think I'm worried about the Anelli injury. The midfield can get run over a little bit on the road without him there and Kalaskan. But Spearings is a really good player with actually a long history of success. I'm really excited. Like they are kind of 14 players deep in a way that they haven't been in a long time. Their tactics are really fun. It's wildly different than last year and wildly different than 2 years ago, where they were so reliant on like these huge long field switches. They don't do very much of that anymore. Like it's just kind of been awesome. Morgan Gilavogi, I haven't mentioned yet, is probably the best player on the team and has been incredible in terms of setting up guys and as a defender and as I don't know. I have so many good things to say about this RSL team. The Sporting Kansas City is awful. So that was a game they should have won and did with ease. But this is a really good Western Conference MLS team. And it's stunning to me that it's come together this quickly. Huge props to their player development guys. Huge props to the coaching staff for this tactical system. It's as impressive as I can kind of imagine RSL being.
Are you day drinking? I've never heard you this positive about RSL.
They are. I mean, they're 4-1-1, right?
Yeah.
They have the good results, and they look it on the field. I mean, if it were just me saying these things, sure, but you read MLS coverage around the league, and they are also pretty smitten with what RSL is doing this year. They've been awesome.
So you are or you are not day drinking?
No.
Okay. Philip Quinton has 2 assists. Okay, I was fully expecting to pull it up and see 1, but he has 2. So 2 assists for Big Phil.
For a center back.
Yeah. Hey, look, I thought he was great.
In transition?
I thought he was great against Sporting Kansas City. I don't know. Maybe it's PTSD. I just get nervous when he's in one-on-one situations, but he's been better than expected. I'll give you that.
Okay. I mean, I'm taking his performance this year over Engel or Glad or I guess DeAndre Edlin's been hurt. Best player on the team right now is Gozo, though, which is crazy.
Oh, my gosh.
19-year-old from Utah, right?
Yeah. No,
he's a $10 to $15 million worth player, right now.
That goal, I mean, it was stunning. That skill check, that volley goal is great. So I'm glad you're excited. I hope it lasts. Thanks for the time, buddy. Let's get out and swing the clubs, okay?
Sounds good, man. Thanks.
Andy Larson, Salt Lake Tribune, was with the Jazz, on the Jazz beat, I should say, for a long time. They moved him over to a data role, but he still dabbles from time to time. At Andy B. Larson on social media is where you find him. All right, Matt Brown is going to join us coming up next. Some college football chatter for you guys on a Wednesday before we catch a break. Brand new client alert on the show. And I'm pumped about this because I work with him. So it makes it easy for me to tell you my experience. And if you want to experience something similar, you should work with them too. They're called Game Day Men's Health. It is now April. You have 3 months of data at your disposal as to whether or not you followed up on that New Year's resolution to get in shape. Have you been trying and it just hasn't been the progress you were hoping for after a few months? Well, that's what I experienced a few years ago. Set a goal. Okay, we're going to do this. Going to eat healthy, going to get back in the gym, all the things. And after a few months, I'm like, I thought I'd be further along than this because I'm old. Not as young as I used to be. I was telling my friend about it. He said, check this out, Game Day Men's Health. Follow the protocol. Currently, they're offering you the very same deal they give me, which is the following. Step 1, free consultation. So stop what you're doing and go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com right now to schedule that, okay? Lehigh, Pleasant Grove, Cottonwood Heights, that's the one I use, in South Ogden, okay? So schedule your free consultation. The free consultation is this. It's a little bit of blood work. It takes 15 to 20 minutes out of your day. It doesn't take long at all. They sit down. They go over your levels with you. They show you where you're doing well, which is good. Then they show you where you're a little bit deficient as you age and where they can help you. For me, that was supplementing testosterone and utilizing some of their peptides. 2 things that I'm still doing to this day, almost 3 years later. And then within a couple of months after utilizing their products, I made a ton of progress, 10 times more than I had prior to. They have semaglutide, they have tirzepatide, they have all the weight loss stuff if you're in need of losing a lot of weight. But if you use this deal, that stuff is more affordable there than it would be anywhere, and here's why. When you tell them you heard me talking about it on the show, they're knocking 50% off your membership. 50% off all year long. You get 9 months left of half off all their stuff. So go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com right now. That's Game Day Men's Health. All right, Matt Brown joins us coming up next on ESPN 700. All right, we'll get into the end of the program coming up. Let you know what we have coming up tomorrow. State of Sport Awards tonight. Going to be presenting an award, High School Male Athlete of the Year. I'm not allowed to tell you who that is. Let's talk some college football, some college sports, the business of. Get your pencils out, get your pens out. Time to take some notes as the professor, Matt Brown, joins us on a Wednesday. Hello, Matt. Happy Wednesday, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me back. It's a pleasure to be here.
I appreciate the time. So let's start with the executive order signed by Donald Trump, taking a break from his busy schedule to fix college sports for all of us. My question for you is, how effective is this going to be? Will it lead to meaningful change, and what are the next steps?
Probably not, right? And this seems to be the general consensus among legal analysts that study college athletics on a regular basis. The biggest reason for this, right, is an executive order isn't a law. It's something that you can enact for governance of executive branches and college athletics is not part of the executive branch right now. What the White House is hoping to do through this executive order is create a system where if schools don't follow their vision for transfers and how NIL governance should be done, then the Department of Education will potentially withhold research funding or other federal funding for things that have nothing to do with sports. And the challenge here is that there's no guarantee that you lose funding. It's kind of capricious that you may lose funding. And the White House has already picked several of those fights in higher education over the last year, and they've lost some of them. So this is the kind of thing that you could probably pull off if you weren't in the middle of a war and it was early in your tenure when you have all of the political momentum and the White House decided to go pick fights with other institutions during that time. But when you're polling at 36%, and when you've got a literal war going on right now, it's way easier for schools to look at that and say, we don't care. Because it's one thing to say we want rules. It's another thing to say you want rules when it might hurt your team. And the only way that you can get to something that stands up to a lawsuit, that can be enforced when somebody throws a temper tantrum, isn't when a president waves his magical pen. It's when you get Congress to actually pass a law, something that doesn't happen very much these days.
And where are we at in that process as far as the congressional involvement to get something done with the, two sides that don't seem to enjoy playing nice right now?
It's interesting. I would say that there really has been a change in some of the conversations that I've had with congressional staffers over the last 2-ish weeks or so. And I really wouldn't, attribute that so much to the executive order as it is acknowledging the reality right now of what kind of legislative coalition you need to get a bill passed. The NCAA and the Big 12 and the ACC and the Big 10 and these major conferences have really put a lot of eggs in the basket of the SCORE Act, which is written by Republicans and supported by the majority of the GOP in the House, and it's very NCAA friendly. And somehow it hasn't managed to pass the House in over a year. There's not even a vote scheduled right now, and it's completely DOA in the Senate. That wouldn't – I think if SCORE had passed 9 months ago, I think there was a legitimate chance it could get through the Senate. You can't do it now because if you need one of those bills, you need multiple Democrats to vote for it. And with Trump now having his fingerprints on so many of these ideas, nobody's going to bail him out right now. Where I do think you could still see an actual bipartisan bill are actions that only indirectly impact what's happening in college athletics right now, whether that's revisions to the Sports Broadcasting Act, which has a lot to do with professional sports but could potentially change some things in college sports. You may see some bipartisan legislation about new gambling restrictions or regulations on that front, which will impact college athletics. But when it comes to the transfer portal, when it comes to athlete compensation and employment status, I would be very, very surprised if something happens this year.
So it's pretty commonplace these days for young men playing college basketball and college football to be 24, 25, 26. And to that, BYU will say, well, where have you been? We've been doing this for years. So ultimately, the report today is the NCAA is considering a significant change to its eligibility rules, which kind of sounds like this. You'll have a full 5 years of eligibility from the time of your 19th birthday or your high school graduation, whichever is earliest. Will there be exceptions here for LDS missionaries?
Yeah, in Ross Dellinger's original report today, he pointed to three possible exceptions. Religious service being one of them, the other two being military service and maternity leave. And I texted around a couple of other ADs that were hearing about this policy and talking through it, and that was the gist of what I got back was, it's going to dramatic. There is an energy here, and an excitement, an interest in dramatically cutting back on the number of waivers. Because that's the kind of thing that invites litigation, right? Okay, you have 5 years to play for, unless you get a hangnail and you miss 3 games, or unless there's this kind of extenuating circumstance, because there's always going to be those things. One way you could protect yourself from constantly being sued about eligibility and end up in a world where you have some guys playing their 8th or 9th year in college is by saying, all right, we're going to dramatically limit the possible exceptions to just these 3 things. Now, I kind of speculated about this, and this is something I think I'd probably want to hear more from folks at BYU or Utah State or poke around a little bit more. I do wonder if there's a world where it's 5 years to play 5 unless you go on a mission, and the international recruiting changes a little bit, and the math behind building a roster changes a little bit. I do wonder if that would make it harder for somebody who is a returned LDS missionary or wants to go, interrupt their playing career to go serve a mission. I do wonder if it might be harder for them to find a spot outside of a place like BYU, who I think is always going to be accommodating for those kind of athletes, or, Utah institutions where 40 or more % of their student body happens to be LDS. I could see a world where maybe somebody at Oregon or Ohio State or Oklahoma State says, why bother unless the guy's an absolute 5-star? And given how much money you can make in college now, I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to head into a world where there just aren't very many of those guys going on missions the same way that they might have done 10 years ago.
Another option, and I don't know if you've looked into this, so if you want to punt, we can absolutely punt, but Ryder Lyons is serving a 1-year mission, and he's this 4-star quarterback who's going to play for BYU. Look, I honestly don't really know what's going on with this. We had a guest on from BYU TV who gave me the whole it's his free agency to only serve for 1 year, to which I said, well, I wasn't aware of that when maybe I would have gone if it was my free agency to serve for 6 years. I don't know. Maybe it's a change in policy. Maybe missionaries are now just going for a year instead of 2. But with this potential ruling, is maybe the 1-year athlete exception or whatever that is something that we'll see more of?
Maybe, right? I don't think there's a whole lot of guys each year like a Ryder Lyons where you are somebody who is 18 and really interested in missionary service, but also being recruited at a top 60 level in your respective sport. There's going to be some every year, but it's not super common. And I wouldn't want to insinuate that anybody is doing anything untoward or anything, but though I know enough about LDS church history to know that the expectations around missionary service and what that looks like have changed a lot over 70 years. There was a time when football players generally weren't expected to go at all, and then there was a time when more than half of them were. And if we're shifting to a world where maybe some people go for a year and do some other stuff later in their life, I don't know if anybody else in Salt Lake would necessarily complain. I don't know if Ryder comes back after 1 year and ends up having an excellent college career and an excellent NFL career and becomes this nationally known LDS figure. I don't think there's going to be too many people in Utah that are like, yeah, but he missed out on 12 more months of door knocking.
For sure. I wonder if you've been able, and I know you do a lot of work on budgets and fiscal year spending and such.
Yeah.
I've heard so many numbers tied to A.J. DeBonsa and the BYU basketball program this year. And look, unfortunately, they couldn't stay healthy, but the A.J. DeBonsa experience was everything we thought it could be. That kid is awesome. They had a lot of injuries, so they lost in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Do you have any idea what exactly they paid him and kind of where they rank as far as Big 12 spend on the basketball side?
I don't have a very exact answer. My best understanding is that the popular number that gets circulated a lot in the press, which I want to say is around 4.5, right? Every time when I see that mentioned, I also know that there are people at BYU that are like, well, we didn't pay him 4.5, and that I believe, right? Some of that money came from Red Bull. Some of that money has come from other marketing deals. And if you are somebody who is going to be a top 3 pick in the NBA draft, yeah, you will get 6- and 7-figure marketing deals. I would imagine that compensation directly from the house fund would have been somewhere in the low 7 figures, but whether it was 1 or 2 or 2.5, I don't know. And honestly, I don't even really think it matters. What matters, I think, is that you had a roster this year that was certainly not at the bottom of compensation, whether that compensation came directly from BYU, whether it was laundered through Cookie Man, whether it was through Red Bull, whether it was through any other things. I don't find the distinction between what money came from a .edu and what didn't to be as important as maybe some people in the BYU communications department or in Salt Lake City might I think, because at schools across the country, the stuff that's coming from the school and not is operated hand in glove like a political candidate in a PAC. I would feel comfortable saying, yeah, that roster was near the top end of the league in terms of total comp. I don't know if it will be again next year, and I think it was worth it. Honestly, and that might be a take where reasonable people here could disagree, but I don't think what the brands and the school and the donors and everybody else paid, even though this team didn't make a deep run, I don't think you can argue it still wasn't successful.
I think it absolutely was successful. I mean, look, Matt, for years I've just been screaming, like, why are you running from the fact that you have the resources to be competitive in this landscape? It's a great thing. That kid is awesome, and he's a good kid. And in a season that was otherwise disappointing, A.J. DeBonsa delivered every possible return on that investment that he could have, in my opinion.
Yeah, and not only that, right? When everybody at BYU was healthy, this was one of the most exciting teams to watch in the country.
Yeah.
They were top 15 for a while.
Yep.
Were very competitive in major national games, and BYU was playing relevant basketball throughout the entire season. I think that's basically all you can ask. The only question, and you and I have talked about this a little bit before, and I've seen it elsewhere, was spending this money, whether it came from the school or not, did that damage or limit the institution's reputation with their fans or donors or sponsoring institution in any way? And I personally don't think that that's true. Maybe some hardliners listening to this might feel differently, or listening to another station. It's not like everybody they brought in got into trouble. It seemed like they were all mostly pretty good kids. You didn't have any enormous institutional shaking scandals or anything, and some guys got hurt. That's basketball. Like, if you want to point to teams this year that had high payrolls that weren't successful, I would not put BYU in the top 10 of that list.
I agree, and I can assure you the hardliners are not listening to this station. Okay, I can promise you that. But I will follow up with this. Our friends at The Athletic did a really good job, Chris Camerati and one of his cohorts, kind of digging into this dynamic, and you'll see a tweet here or there, and I'm not really on Twitter as much anymore because of several reasons, or you'll Sure. You know, I'm the oldest of six in an LDS family, and so I have a lot of BYU fans around me and a lot of very devout members of the LDS church around me that love BYU, and you will hear an occasional Jake Retzlaff this, Kennard Davis DUI that. Is this really how we want to be spending the money if these players aren't necessarily bringing the positive exposure on the institution that we were hoping? You do hear that a little bit.
Yeah, I've heard this a little bit too, right? You know, I'm married into a big BYU family, and if I go to family reunions or talk to people, this comes up a little bit. And I freely admit this is probably a blind spot for me because I'm not in this world the same way that I used to be, and don't know who I would necessarily trust to be an authoritative figure here for measuring this. I have to imagine any kind of potential discontent among fans isn't what it was compared to, say, the Gary Crowton era. And I'm not talking about on the field. I'm talking about off the field kind of things.
Sure,
I don't think people are doing anything quite that bad at this scale. And you're in a different league, right? Like, you can't pretend to be a Division III institution if you're going to be playing Big 12 basketball. And it certainly seems like just about everybody involved is okay making that trade. The only thing that ever bothers me, and I'm only speaking for me, right? And I would understand if someone listening to this saying, like, we don't care what Matt thinks. He's not on this team anymore. And I said, that's fine, right? But the only thing that ever bothers me is when I feel as if a fan or someone affiliated with the institution in some way is simply not being honest about what's being spent or what they're doing. If you're saying we're going to do what everybody else does in this league, we want our people to graduate, we want them to have a faith-informed experience, and we're not going to pretend to be doing it for 8 cents and warm hugs and freshly baked brownies, great. If you insinuate that, like, no, we're only getting people here because they just love the creamery so much, and they love wholesome hiking activities, and nobody would come here over filthy lucre or anything. And like, when I hear that, then I'm like, please don't lie to me. But if that's not the argument you're making, I don't see any issues with what's going on.
We're on the very same page. I take it a step further. I say own it proudly. You're spending what you need to spend. And there are plenty of schools, and maybe there's one about a mile and a half away from here that would love to have that bankroll to bring in talent on the football and basketball side of things. I will ask you, though, it was announced today, the University of Utah is naming Matt Webb, expected to name Matt Webb. It's not official. The former VP of corporate sponsorships for the Saints and the Pelicans as the new CEO of the Utah Brand Initiatives, which is the company that Utah is forming for the partnership between Utah and Otro Capital. We still have not heard the deal being finalized, and we still don't know what it's going to look like entirely. I've heard some things here or there, but do you have any update information on this?
And, it's so funny. I did send a note to Utah just a couple of days ago reminding them, like, hey, it's been like 3 months since I filed my grandma. And you haven't even issued a denial yet. Like, I think the statute requires you to continue on this process. One thing that I can share, because I've heard this now from multiple lawmakers in person, that the Otro Capital deal, as has been described and reported in the mainstream press and in my own publication, is one that is really unpopular in Washington, D.C., and not just unpopular with the Elizabeth Warren crowd, but unpopular with multiple congressional Republicans. Now, are they going to be able to do anything about it in time? My guess is probably not, but I think that the regulatory risk associated with being the first public institution to really jump in with both feet on this deal, especially since, my understanding is that there's lawmakers in Utah that felt like, we were a little bit blindsided by this. This feels like something we should have been made aware of. Like, that's not a small thing. This is part of what ended up torpedoing the Big Ten's deal, was fear about regulatory risk and fear about people who are not in the room that feel like they should have been in the room and then might blow it up afterwards. So that's kind of what happened with the Michigan Regents. So all I would say is I hope that there's nobody associated with this Utah project right now that is signing 40-year mortgages that can't be unwound in case the next Congress or in case Trump or anybody else decides to look at public university private capital financing much more skeptically. This is a move that I think in part because Utah hasn't been as communicative about the terms as they would for another kind of commercial entity. It's easy for a lawmaker to spin a different story, and moving what are perceived to be public assets out of the public is always going to concern people.
Before I say you loose, and I continue to kind of see reports on NIL and rev share spend, I just don't have an accurate landing spot to know, okay, this is exactly the deal. BYU is a private institution, as we know. Utah is not. Now, there were some records released a few weeks ago that shed some light on the uncomfortable end of the Kyle Whittingham era and the transition over to Morgan Scalley. And we know that part of Kyle's ask, because he did ask for an extension, was $20 million in NIL. Do you have any frame of reference for what Utah is spending on NIL and rev share on their basketball and football programs compared to their Big 12 peers?
What I would feel comfortable saying is, like, I'm quite confident Utah spent to the max of what they were allowed to institutionally last year. My understanding is that everybody in the Big 12 either did, or in the case of BYU and I think Baylor, like, almost did, and then they want, just so they could say that they didn't go all 100%. Like, I don't think that difference was meaningful. The question is what was spent over the cap, and nobody, whether it's Utah or LSU or Ole Miss or Georgia or Ohio State, nobody is going to put it in writing that they're going to spend or give a football program more than $16 million a year, because that would require spending over the cap. And you may have a handshake agreement for that. You may ask for it, but no one's going to be stupid enough to put that down on pen to paper, because that's asking for the CSC to then begin to litigate you. The thing that's kind of unique about the Big 12, at least on the football side, is everybody and their brother knows who was number one last year, which was Texas Tech. But this is a league where the difference between, I think, the number 2 and number 3 team and like 11th team in terms of budget is not super significant. Was Utah football 3rd or 6th or 8th? I don't really know. The numbers that I had heard for most of the Big 12 last year were under 20. I don't know if anybody else spent more than 20 for football for last year. I don't think that really matters that much. The important thing in this era, if you're not going to spend Texas Tech kind of money, and I feel reasonably confident that neither BYU or Utah is prepared to do that in the immediate future, it's more important to spend that money efficiently and wisely than it is to have 17 while West Virginia has 15.
Yeah, well said. All right, buddy, tell everybody where they can go get your work, and I'll set you loose.
You bet. So speaking of budgets, I have written a ton of stories about this on Extra Points recently, but getting the operating budgets for everyone across in the country for various sports. Tomorrow we're going to have one on women's volleyball. We got for about 210 institutions, including all the public schools in the Big 12, along with analysis of many of the legal changes and policy changes happening in college athletics. If you want to read what your AD is reading, check it out at extrapointsmb.com.
Good stuff today, bud. Have a great week. We'll chat soon, okay?
Okay. Appreciate it. Yep. Be well, guys.
All right. The great Matt Brown, Extra Points. It's a must stop for me on a daily basis to prepare for the show. Told you all the touch points where you can get it. Brought to you today by our friends at IFA. They've got a team of pro turf and landscape sales consultants that help provide products and services to local baseball and soccer fields at high schools around the state. Plus, IFA works with golf courses, parks, and other city properties throughout Utah. It's the same knowledge and care they can share with you about your yard, only at IFA. Head over to IFA.coop or stop by one of their neighborhood stores today. 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. Final hour of the program on a Wednesday is next on ESPN 700. Not one to dabble in TMZ relationship-y type storylines. This Diana Rossini, Mike Vrabel story is a little wild. Penny for the thoughts of Mike Vrabel's wife and Diana Rossini's husband. Apparently, Mike Vrabel, who's the head coach of the Patriots, so we don't like him on this show, and Diana Rossini, who used to be with ESPN, now she's with the New York Times and The Athletic. There are pictures surfacing of them hugging and holding hands at a luxury resort. They both have had to release statements about this situation. Have you been following this at all? Have you been seeing some of these clips floating around?
Very surface level, just stuff that's gone popular. Both married, or at least legally married. I think one of them is separated at the moment. This isn't the first time. This has been a kind of a light story or a rumor mill.
Okay.
Specifically with Miss Rossini. So, I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. TMZ stuff.
Yeah.
That we'll, I'm sure, learn a little bit more about. Aren't they? Doesn't Vrabel have documentary stuff going on? Isn't he the?
I don't know.
I think there's some cameras all around them at the moment. So, pretty brave.
Okay, pretty brave. And, Diana Rossini's job is getting inside information, getting a scoop. I guess, I don't know. This is taking over the internet.
Yeah. I can't wait to hear more about their relationship. Bill Belichick, of course. The update there in Chapel Hill. The Patriots coaches relationship is now essentially the new Bravo series.
Yeah. Speaking of Chapel Hill, Michael Malone officially introduced as the new head coach of the North Carolina basketball program, one of the top 5 paid coaches in the country. And he said today this is the only college job he would have looked at. I was convinced that he was just simply waiting his time to take another NBA job. But if you're not going to take an NBA job, you could do a lot worse than as the head coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels. By the way, some breaking news. Robert Wright III from BYU is entering the transfer portal. And Jeff Borzello is claiming that he's leaving BYU. He said Rob Wright will be headed to his third school in 3 years after starting his career at Baylor in 2024-2025. Rob had a good year for BYU, all Big 12, third team, 18 points, 3 boards, about 5 assists, 41% from the three-point line. So we'll see. I mean, the report is he's leaving, but you never know until an announcement is actually made, because just because you're in the portal doesn't mean you're leaving. Haven't heard a ton, anything today about additions for Utah. We told you yesterday that Seydou Traore has joined Terrence Brown and Kiana Dawes in the transfer portal. So, yeah, transfer portal in college basketball, transfer portal-ine, doing transfer portal things. Little tease, Alex Jensen will join the program next week. He will join the Reality Check podcast, which will be played here on this radio show. And speaking of that, as of about 20 minutes ago, episode 2 of my Reality Check podcast with KUTV is posted. It is a long-form conversation with head coach of Real Salt Lake, Pablo Mastroeni. Pablo played for the best World Cup team we've had in the modern era. That was 2002. They went to the quarterfinals and lost to Germany 1-0. But they won a knockout game. They beat Mexico, got out of a really tough group. So we talked World Cup, talked a little RSL, as that club is off to a great start. So Alex Jensen will be my guest next week. The week after that, Ryan Smith will join the show. Got a lot of exciting things happening in that space. So wherever you get your podcast, would appreciate your support. Called Reality Check with Spence Checketts, wherever you get your shows. We've got 7 NBA games tonight, and 4 of them actually feature 2 teams trying to win. Kind of an anomaly. Hawks Cavs going on right now. T-Wolves Magic. Blazers Spurs. Thunder Clippers. And then the rest of the games feature 1 team trying to win and 1 team trying to lose. State of Sport Awards tonight. I will be presenting the award for the high school male athlete of the year.
Spill the beans.
I'm not allowed to tell you who it is.
Spill the beans.
Not allowed.
Come on.
I've been sworn to secrecy.
Someone from South Summit, I assume.
Well,
we'll just pencil that in.
I made the push to retroactively give the award to you or I for our stellar high school careers, but that was met with some pushback.
Yeah, understandable. I appreciate the nod, but man, you got to go back over a decade now. It's a long time.
Oh, you watch your mouth, okay? The footage of our basketball team looks like it's from 1940.
There's footage.
VHS tape.
Color?
Yeah, there's color, but you know what's funny? Because we got together a few years ago to honor our coach before he retired. I didn't remember this at all. But after the greatest high school team in the history of the state, Bountiful Braves, 1997, won the state championship. Again, that's not my opinion.
Right.
That's historians. That's analysts. It's not me. We're sitting there watching the footage of the game. Then after the game, David James interviewed me.
DJ.
For KUTV. A young DJ interviewed me as a senior in high school for KUTV after the game. And then a young Wes Ruff pulled me aside and interviewed me. I completely forgot.
Love that.
Yeah, now they're, now we're in the same industry here in the market.
Now, I mean, Chris Comrani was at my football games.
Yeah.
JJ for Sports Beat.
Nice.
Dave Fox in a helicopter one time.
Yes, the Fox Den, the Fox's Den. That was the thing.
They flew the helicopter up into the mountains and landed there and did the TV show from Camas. So I got to know, at least in a very short form interview, a bunch of the folks that I would work with in the future.
Dave Fox outwardly flirted with my wife when I was like 22.
Speaking of, the video that Dave Fox posted over the weekend made my weekend.
So Dave Fox was in St. George over the weekend, posted a video of himself. He's taking a video of himself, flat brim hat, he's right. 70, delivering swig to his family because they're thirsty with some sort of techno track in the background.
Just forget the flat brim hat, the Dave Fox being the subject. It is a video that you would have thought is from like a 12-year-old girl's Instagram.
Correct.
Right? It's like cut together. It's him at the pool. It's a floaty here. It's a non-alcoholic beverage here. A little TikTok dance or something here. And no, it's Dave Fox.
Yeah, he's like bobbing his head.
He is an actual TV character, which
he is.
Apropos.
Every market has a Dave Fox, and Dave Fox is our Dave Fox. We have him in this market, and I'm learning more and more about him as I work with him more and more. He's one of one.
He is.
Dave is. So, yeah, State of Sport Awards tonight. Again, cannot tell you who the men's high school athlete of the year is. I'll be presenting that award. So I got to get out of here. I got to look pretty. What should I wear? They're saying business
bow tie.
Attire. I don't have a bow tie.
Yes, you do.
I do not.
You do too.
I don't. I rent a tux when I need a tux. I don't own a tuxedo.
That is a upset.
I don't know very many people who do own tuxedos.
I don't know if I believe that.
No, you rent them. You're going to wear a tux no matter who you are, unless you're like going to all these dinners and awards, unless you're like Brad Pitt. You're going to wear a tux.
What I thought Mr. Checketts over here
good point.
Was at a lot of galas and
good point.
Opening ceremonies.
No, yeah, you're right.
Ribbon cuttings.
No, Brad Pitt, Bradley Cooper, me. Yeah, it's a small group. No, it's like $30 to rent a tux for the night, and it's like $500 to get a nice one to own.
Okay,
it's silly.
I thought you would have one and maybe a suit guy, but
no, I've got several nice suits, but I do not own a tuxedo. I'll throw a suit on for the night.
Okay,
that's why I have to go change. All right, let's get out of here. Porter comes our way on a Thursday edition of this radio show.
NBA Daily Assist style on a Thursday. Our guy Zach Harper drops by the program. We'll get an RSL guest on the show on a Thursday. Of course, Dunny's out, so we'll go another direction there, but still talking some Claret and Cobalt. Sarah Todd for some Jazz regular season wrap-up. Our friends from Sports Court, Handy and Handy, check in, and we'll go from there on a Thursday.
There you go. So join us for that show. We will say goodnight and a special thank you today to Tim McMahon, Richard Smith, Andy Larson, and Matt Brown. If you missed any of the sound, go to the website. which is ESPN700sports.com. Download our mobile app and take us on the go. ESPN 700 app is available on the App Store and the Google Play Store. And then asking you, please, if you like what I do, asking you to support two different things. Number one, this show. It's called The Drive with Spence Checketts. Podcast is available wherever you get your shows. Number two, Reality Check with Spence Checketts with our friends at Sinclair Media and KUTV. Episode 2 hit today. Pablo Mastroeni, Alex Jensen next week. Ryan Smith the week after that. He's Porter. I'm Spence saying good night. Have a good Wednesday evening. Talk to you on a Thursday drive. As always, you can catch